Okay. We will reconvene the special meeting of the Folsom City Council. Mr. City Attorney, is there any final action to report out?
Good evening, Madam Mayor. No final action.
Okay, then we will adjourn the special meeting and call to order the regular meeting of the Folsom City Council on Tuesday, January 14th, 2020. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Gaylord.
Here.
Howell.
Here.
Kozlowski.
Here.
Sheldon.
Here.
And Aquino.
Here, and if you would all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, do we have any agenda updates?
You do have one update to item number 2. The information has been provided to the council members and is available to the public at the table in the back of the chambers.
Okay, thank you. If you could call the first item, please.
Your first item is business from the floor, and this evening you have no request to speak under business from the floor.
So if anybody has anything to speak, you can come on down to the podium. This is the time that we welcome your participation and your comments, although state law does prevent us from deliberating or taking action on any item that is not on the agenda. I do not see anybody coming forward, so we will go to the next item.
Okay, your first scheduled presentation tonight, item number 1, is the Folsom Plan Area Quarterly Update for 2019 fourth quarter. And Community Development Director Pam Johns will be presenting tonight.
Okay, and if I could just interject something here quickly and ask a favor of my colleagues. I think we can have these things go more smoothly and get most of our questions answered, because staff does a great job of anticipating our questions, if we hold our comments and our questions until staff has finished presenting. And then whatever has not been addressed, we will give you an opportunity to do that. So Pam, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor Aquino, members of the City Council, Pam Johns, Community Development Director. And this is a regular quarterly report out that we've been providing to the Council over the last 2 years. And so this is an opportunity for us to share activity within the Folsom Plan area south of Highway 50 over the last 90-day period, essentially October 1st through the end of the year, as well as things that are kind of on the pending list. As a reminder, we talk about planning, infrastructure or site development, map activity, and building activity. And then as a courtesy to members of the public, we remind them that we have a website that has a robust amount of information about the project, and that we post this presentation every time to the website so that it's available for members of the public who want to dig a little deeper on anything that's being presented this evening. So just a reminder, this is the specific plan land use exhibit that has the approved tentative subdivision maps highlighted over the top of it. In terms of planning activity over the last 90 days, we had 2 new submittals for planning entitlements, we have 4 pending applications. We've reviewed the pending applications at previous quarterly reports, so we're just going to highlight the new applications. The first one is called Rockress. It is a vesting tentative subdivision map, and you can see over to the right here that it's located south of the Enclave small lot subdivision, East Bidwell, just south of Highway 50. We also have a request in for residential design review of the Enclave subdivision. So oftentimes the Enclave subdivision is right here. So again, Rockress and Enclave. And we typically get tentative subdivision maps at the same time that we get, design review, or it follows shortly thereafter. In this case, the map for Enclave was approved a couple years ago, and we just are getting the design review for this small lot single family subdivision. Over the last 90 days, the Planning Commission took final action on 3 projects, and the City Council also took action on 3 projects. I'm going to highlight those briefly. The Planning Commission approved the Enclave residential design. It looks like I have a conflict there. So Enclave Residential Design Review was approved for KB Homes on these lots. So I had an extra slide that carried over. I apologize for repeating that information. We have the Planning Commission approval of White Rock Springs Ranch, which is a more traditional single-family subdivision in the White Rock Springs area. Richmond American Homes is the builder. And the Planning Commission also approved a tentative parcel map to subdivide 54 acres on the southeast corner of East Bidwell and Highway 50 into 4 separate parcels for general commercial and multifamily development. The City Council in the last quarter approved several final maps, and as a reminder, these subdivision maps were previously approved, and the final maps come before the City Council to confirm and verify that all the conditions have been met. So there were several maps in the last quarter of last year. 3 separate maps within the White Rock Springs Ranch area that's highlighted up here in the upper right corner. And then 3 within Mangini Ranch, phase 1 here and phase 2 here. So those all should look relatively familiar because they were before the City Council in primarily November and December of last year. So with that, I'm going to ask City Engineer Steve Cron to come up and go through the rest of the slides on the site development and building development activity.
Good evening. I'll follow up with the remainder of the presentation and kind of give you an update. Before I move forward, I just wanted to say that most of the work in the last quarter can be characterized by weather permitting. So we had hopes and intentions of trying to open Alder Creek Parkway and get started on some other items, but the weather really got in the way of that, and it continues to be kind of an issue. So, but the developers, the landowners, the contractors are all moving forward with construction through the winter as weather permits. So with that, I'll go ahead and move forward. If you notice, we did add the street names, so it's a little more clear. And you were right, it's hard to figure out from an aerial if you don't necessarily have any street names on there. So this is kind of the areas that we're seeing the development occurring over the last 90 days. White Rock Springs Ranch is under grading and construction, villages 1, 8, and 9, and of course Car Trust. I think they paved Car Trust yesterday. It's a 28-lot subdivision where I believe they're going to be constructing their models. Richmond American will be constructing their models probably in the first quarter of this year. Mangini Ranch villages 3 through 7 have been completed. They're ready for acceptance. And Taylor Morrison should be pulling permits to build their next round of models for 6 and 7. I believe they've sold out villages 1 and 2, all of their homes. So they'll be moving into 6 and 7 to start constructing new homes in those 2 villages. We expect to issue the building permit probably in the next week for their models. Excuse me. So I'll move on to the next slide. This is an view of the Mangini Ranch Phase 1B, they're calling it, still Phase 1, villages 3 through 7. We haven't done another aerial with an updated, but we will be doing one in February. The landowners plan to do another overview, so we'll be able to update current conditions based in the first quarter at the next quarterly presentation in April. This is Russell Ranch Phase 1. We added the street names. That's pretty much the same exhibit. That looks fairly consistent with what's out there. We will later in the presentation have some photos of the models that are being constructed in that subdivision. To the right is Alder Creek Parkway as it heads up the hill from Placerville Road on the top right, and the lower right is a recent photograph this week, actually, of the rec center at the top of the hill that we've talked about. They were issued their permits in the last quarter, and again, as weather permits, they're moving forward. They anticipate trying to complete and have that open to the public sometime, hopefully by the end of February, so next month. Here's just a few more photos of Alder Creek Parkway and Grand Prairie Road. And there's also a photograph on the right, a recent photograph of Alder Creek Parkway between Placerville Road and East Bidwell. They've got one side paved in the eastbound direction, but we're going to try to complete the eastbound side before we open it up to the traffic, complete the street lighting so it's a safe road, because once we open back up to the public, we're not going to anticipate or permit any further shutdowns of the roadway. And so there's a couple photographs of on the lower left corner is the respite area that's along the bike path. I believe that's Grand Prairie Road, the Grand Prairie Road side. And then, of course, some benches there on the Alder Creek side on the upper left. Here's the White Rock Springs Ranch project. Villages 8 and 9 is pointed out, Car Trust as well as Village 1. And some photographs. We're expecting those 3 villages to be complete this summer. 8 and 9 will probably lag Villages 1 and Car Trust by a few months. And then the photos on the right are the detention basin that serves this development. It's White Rock Road is in the background there. And then on the far right is a photograph of the recently paved extension of Mangini Parkway from Placerville Road up to the first street, I believe it's Sycamore Creek, that serves Village 1. So they have that paved, and they'll be able to continue with construction now that it's paved, with completing that roadway segment to allow access into Village 1 and, of course, the Car Trust. The Car Trust subdivision. Here's the Enclave that Pam mentioned. This is an outdated photograph, but however, they haven't done a whole lot within the subdivision for the winter. They've kind of had it shut down, but we expect them to resume construction, and we should anticipate having permits being pulled, or at least models in that subdivision, perhaps as early as the first quarter of this year. And part of the closure, if you recall, of Alder Creek Parkway is to allow several 100,000 yards of material to be moved safely across Alder Creek Parkway. That has been completed by the landowners. Now we're just trying to finish Alder Creek Parkway, the improvements to open it back up to the public. And the photo on the right is kind of an outdated photo, but it's the same extension of Alder Creek Parkway between Placerville Road and East Bidwell Street. This is what I wanted to add in this last quarter. The school district has mobilized on the school site, and they have a contractor, and they're working on prepping the site to get started with construction. I think that's their construction trailer out there. So they will commence here in the first quarter on constructing the first elementary school on Mangini Parkway. The school district owns the property, and they're moving forward with that construction. Here is this final map summary. As Pam mentioned earlier, we approved several final maps in the fourth quarter, and so right now, this is kind of the current maps that are approved by the council. Right now we have 1,585 lots final map, and we have 355 lots in plan review. Potentially a couple of those in plan review could be presented in March or maybe in this first quarter. Some may be a little bit after. So we expect probably by the next quarterly report to have almost 2,000 lots final mapped in the plan area. And I wanted to move on to the next item. And this is a table that we put together to track the permits. And I wanted to point out that even though we have 1,585 lots currently mapped, it doesn't mean we can pull building permits on all of those lots. Right now, we've issued 459 building permits as of yesterday, and 239 of those permits that have been issued have been finalized and should be occupied by the future homeowner. So the permits will lag the mapping. So just because we'll have close to 2,000 lots mapped, final mapped and recorded, it doesn't mean we're going to have 2,000 permits right away. It'll probably absorb in those 2,000 lots over the next couple of years. Right now, we currently have 6 home builders pulling permits, actively pulling permits. And by the end of this calendar year, we anticipate up to 10 or 4 additional builders for a total of 10 home builders. That's what the plan is that we're looking at. And until they're submitted and get approved, we won't know for certain, but we have information that we could have up to 4 additional, so total of 10 home builders pulling permits this calendar year. This is kind of we have a tracking mechanism also for recorded maps. This is a snapshot of it during the last quarter. We have the McCann Somps, who's the landowner's engineer and planner. They are keeping track of the maps, so this is kind of a summary, and they update it as we record the maps, and we double check it with our information to make sure everything's accurate. So that's just an exhibit that we follow up with to help, and that obviously mimics what you saw on the first slide as those maps get recorded. The building activity in the last quarter, we have model homes actively being constructed. I believe we have Taylor Morrison. We don't have a photo of them. We've already seen those, and that first phase, villages 1 and 2, has been all permits have all been issued in those 2 villages. So they are constructing the new ones, hopefully this next week if they pull the permits. And we don't have a photo of the next ones. Lennar is up on the top left, I believe, yeah. And that's in villages 8 and 9 in Mangini Ranch Phase 1. Tri-Point Homes is, I believe the Tri-Point Home ones are the top left. The lower left are in Russell Ranch, that's Meritage. That's the I-Court product in Village 4 in Russell Ranch. We're set to open Alder Creek Parkway up to those models. And so we will allow public access into Alder Creek Parkway up to those models probably by this Friday. So we're trying to complete the barricading, keeping the public out of the active construction zones, but still allowing access to Meritage's models. So they should start actively selling their production homes in the very near future. Anthem United is also in villages 6 and 8. And we'll show graphically where these are in a couple exhibits coming up after this one. And then a new home company is on the top right. Their models are getting close. I believe they're making some changes inside to those, so they had gotten started on them. And they're waiting for approvals to relocate some walls and rooms within the building. So they should be actively pursuing getting those completed in this first quarter of 2020. Here's an overall site kind of showing where these home builders will be building. Tri-Point is in villages 3 through 5 on the north side of Mangini Parkway, across from the school site, north of the school site. Taylor Morrison in villages 1 and 2 and 6 and 7 in the lower right. We highlighted the school site and the park site next to it, and Lennar is still actively pulling permits in villages 8 and 9. This is Russell Ranch. You saw this photo earlier, but this is where those Meritage models are opening up on Village 4, which is on the far right. And Anthem United is, I believe, building their models in Village 6 down below, and they'll be building production homes in Village 8, which is the one in the middle in the foreground. And of course, the new home company is in Village 7, and they own lots in Village 7 as well as 1, 2, 3, and 5. Villages 1, 2, 3, and 5. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to answer. I could certainly answer if you'd like.
Anyone have any questions?
Just one. Could you go back over what the total number of lots you think are going to be in the entirety of that plan area? You said there's about 2,000 or so that have been approved, and just...
Yeah, we expect, right now, we've final mapped and recorded 1,585 lots
Right.
on the maps we've recorded.
Mm-hmm.
We have 355 lots in those villages that are in review.
Right.
We anticipate that some of those, or maybe all of them, could go to the council in the first quarter of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do go and get approved, that would add to that 1,585 number for just over 1,900.
I understand that.
Close to 2,000.
The part of the area that only has zoning approval, basically, what's the capacity of the remainder, I guess is the question.
Isn't it 11,400?
That's the total, 11,461.
So at 335 sold, we're at like 3%. I just did the calculation.
No, if you go back a couple of slides to where you have that view right there, the map that shows all the subdivision lots in it.
Yeah.
If we're just approaching 2,000 on the side to the east of East Bidwell, it doesn't feel like you can get 8,000 on the other side.
Well, the items, the ones that are highlighted in red are actually the recorded maps. The ones that are not like Russell Ranch Phase 2, Broadstone Estates, Folsom Heights, those ones to the east, none of those are mapped yet. So
And
there's still
there's
plenty more
also-
capacity plenty more lots to be created east of East Bidwell Street.
Sure.
But we've only mapped 2,000 of those lots. I don't know what the total would be necessarily east, but I would say it'd be approximately half.
Yeah, and the most dense development is missing right now as well, so.
Yes.
Right, none of the apartments are in there. I'm at 11,500. And it's basically the total number of dwelling units. So some of those, a number of that will be multifamily.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Sheldon, do you have any questions?
No.
Councilmember Gaylor? Oh.
The only thing that came to mind looking at the pictures, it looks like it's zero lot line on most of the homes. Is that true?
I don't believe there are any zero lot lines out there that we're
It just
approving.
looks crowded. Is that my
I
observation?
believe they have either 3 or 5 foot side yard setbacks at least. Yeah, mainly 5, I believe, so far on both sides. So, the houses would be 10 feet apart. It's still pretty close, but I don't think we have approved any zero lot line products
Okay.
at this point.
Councilmember Gaylord?
No, thank you, and I appreciate the digital footprint of this as well, which you guys are putting out on the website and, letting folks see it. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And we'll also, we're going to update the permit activity. I showed kind of this format. It helps us keep track of the permits. It helps us identify, we've got zoning in there because the fees are different. So it helps us internally, but it's also good for people that want to know kind of where we are, marketing people. So we'll finalize this and complete it, and then we'll update it monthly, and we'll put it on the website as well.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I just have 2 questions. Any information from the school district as far as the anticipated opening of Mangini Ranch Elementary?
Not formally, I haven't received any.
Okay.
But what we've heard in the past is they wanted to have it open in the fall of 2021.
Okay. And then the second, I see this a lot, this question comes up a lot, and you've probably told us, but maybe you could just refresh our memory. People want to know, why Alder Creek was open and then now it's closed and torn up, and can you just explain that?
Well, it goes back to the beginning, but I'll skip all of that. So what happened was they built Alder Creek Parkway so they could initially reconstruct and rebuild Scott Road, because we had to have access to Placerville Road on. So they built that 2-lane road initially, put a sewer line in it, and put it in with Russell Ranch put it in so Mangini Ranch could rebuild and reconstruct, close Scott Road and rebuild it, which is now East Bidwell Street. So what happened was this last year is the Enclave project was approved. They have a bunch of frontage improvements to do. The Mangini Ranch Phase 2 project was constructed, and they had to move several 100,000 yards of dirt across Alder Creek Parkway to the north side for their villages 4, 5, and 8, I believe. So with all the activity that was going on at the same time, we felt it was in the best interest of everybody, the traveling public, to get all that work done sooner than later. If they had to keep the traffic, keep it open for traffic, it would take twice as long. It might go through 2 summers because you've got to close 1 lane. We had utilities, water lines, storm drain going down the middle of the roadways, the paved. So it would have extended it. So the idea is we were going to let them close it for 6 months. Of course, we've exceeded that 6 months, which is we're not happy about, but it's nothing we can do about it now. But they have completed what they needed to do by moving the dirt across there. Now we're just trying to get the road reopened. And they're building frontage improvements. They're going to have street lights now. If you recall, when it was open the first time, it was kind of a steep drop off on both sides because it was just a 2-lane road with short shoulders. Hopefully now it'll be a safer environment. We won't have to shut it again. And it will hopefully be complete. The current schedule shows the end of February, but in our last quarterly presentation, the schedule showed it being completed December 13th. So you can kind of figure out what we're dealing with. But hopefully, with weather permitting, we can get it open by that date.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next item, please.
Okay, your next item tonight is scheduled presentation number 2. This is a presentation regarding new California laws that are pertaining to accessory dwelling units and upcoming Folsom Municipal Code amendments to ensure consistency with state law. And Principal Planner Desmond Parrington will be presenting tonight.
Great, thank you. And just again, I know this is going to be a lot of new information, and we're going to have a lot of questions, but if we could just let Desmond go all the way through his presentation, I'm sure he has anticipated a lot of those questions, and then we will ask any others when he's done.
Mayor Aquino, members of the City Council, I'm Desmond Parrington, Principal Planner in the Community Development Department. Tonight's presentation is going to be about accessory dwelling units, and in particular, the spate of state laws that have been passed and are in effect currently that affect the regulatory environment for accessory dwelling units. So I'll walk you through those laws, discuss the changes, the reason for the update, give you a comparison about what our current regulations are and what the new regulations are, then talk about next steps because staff is in the process of preparing a new ordinance so that we can get that on the books quickly. We're actually taking that separate from the rest of the zoning code because the laws have gone into effect so that we can get those laws on the books and any standards we want associated with those. And then there'll be time at the end, as Mayor Aquino mentioned, for questions. And I do have some specific questions for you all regarding this. So what is an ADU? Essentially, it's a small independent residential dwelling that is either attached, detached, or constructed internally to a home. There's also what's called, and this is relatively new, a junior accessory dwelling unit. So those are smaller units. They are generally a converted bedroom of a home. They do have either their own bathroom facilities or shared bathroom facilities and what we call an efficiency kitchen, which is essentially a sink and a drain, and then either a microwave or some sort of hot plate. It has to have an exterior entrance, and it can be no more than 500 square feet. So there are quite a few benefits of accessory dwelling units. Not only are they less expensive than a typical home or even a condominium, but they're lower cost to construct, and they are well suited for folks that want to age in place, for young people that are not yet ready to move out and looking for an affordable place to stay, and then also for extended families, friends, and so forth. It can also be a source of income for folks who want to rent them out. So the reason we're doing this is because, as you can see, there's quite a few new laws that were passed last year. There were some additional ones passed before that, with the goal of encouraging accessory dwelling unit development as a means of addressing the affordable housing crisis. The new laws do limit what we can do, and they are designed to speed up the development review process and to require certain development standards. They are in effect now, and if our city ordinance does not comply with some of those standards, and so as a result, the state law, in the event of a conflict, state law prevails. And if we do not update our ordinance and do not allow these types, there are penalties for non-compliance. Then finally, in our housing element, which is kind of our 8-year plan to address housing needs, and in particular affordable housing needs in Folsom, we have to have a plan to encourage development of accessory dwelling units and identify potential incentives. So the new rules, so I'll go over these, and again, can answer any questions at the end. Basically, when we're updating our ordinance, our ability to regulate accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units is limited. So a number of years ago, these used to be discretionary things that might have been heard by the Planning Commission or Council. More recently, they've become basically a staff level review and approval, and then that has tightened up even further. So we do have to send our ordinance to the state for review and approval, and it also does exempt accessory dwelling units from environmental review. Basically, when we get an application for a accessory dwelling unit or a junior accessory dwelling unit, we have to review and approve that within 60 days. If there's no action by the city within 60 days, then it's deemed approved. So we have to allow them in all residential areas. That's a big change from in the past. Generally, they were confined to single-family zones. Now they are allowed in both single-family and multifamily zones, so apartment zones as well as single-family. And they are on the same lot. In addition, there are new rules regarding conversion. So if you convert a garage or can convert an accessory structure on your property into an ADU, there are new laws that are favorable and limit what the requirements can be on those converted ADUs. The other thing that they've done is they have limited cities' abilities to put owner occupancy requirements on them. In the rest of the city, we do have an owner occupancy requirement, but in the historic district, we do not. So this would extend that provision citywide, that we could not limit it to owner occupancy. And this is a kind of a pilot program that would sunset in 2025. So unless it's renewed by the state, we could revisit our ordinance and put that requirement into effect. We cannot allow them to be used as short-term rentals, kind of Airbnbs or VRBOs. Again, the desire for these is to add to the kind of the long-term rental supply and not have these be just vacations stay places. The other thing, and this is somewhat unusual, and I don't think we'll see a lot of this, but under certain conditions, the ADU can be sold separately from the property. There's a bunch of agreements. It has to be done by an affordable housing developer, and there has to be long-term affordability restrictions with the accessory dwelling unit. It's a little bit of a clunky process, so I don't envision a lot of that happening here, but it is something rather unusual and that can be done. Now, even though the state has limited our ability to impose standards, there is some limited flexibility, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the presentation tonight. But essentially, we have to have rules on the books that allow for an 800 square foot, 16-foot tall accessory dwelling unit that has no more than a 4-foot side yard and rear yard setback. The other thing that it's done is it's basically set some minimums and maximums. So we can't, we have to allow a accessory dwelling unit as small as 150 square feet. For our maximum, we have to, the lowest maximum that we can set is 850 square feet for an accessory dwelling unit that has one bedroom. For ones that have 2 or more bedrooms, it's 1,000 square feet at least. If it's an attached accessory dwelling, that means it's attached to the primary home, then it can be as much as 50% of the primary home's square footage. So if you had a 3,000 square foot home, you could have a 1,500 square foot accessory dwelling unit. Keep in mind, our previous threshold was 1,200 square feet. And if it's the conversion of an existing structure, like a garage, like some sort of shed or something like that, into an accessory dwelling unit, there are no setbacks that are required for that. If it's not, if it's detached, or if it's a new attached one, then it's a 4-foot side and rear yard setback. So with regard to parking, parking is, again, fairly limited. We can allow for no more than one parking space. It's an uncovered parking space, and we're supposed to allow tandem parking or parking in setbacks. If a garage on a lot is converted into an accessory dwelling unit, then none of those spaces have to be replaced. So even if that garage serves as the primary parking, to meet our requirement of 2 parking spaces per home, that we cannot require them, if they convert it to an accessory dwelling unit, to replace those 2 parking spaces. It also says that if it's in a historic district, a half mile from transit, part of a home that's converted to an ADU, so like the junior accessory dwelling unit standard I mentioned, or there are parking permits required, but they aren't granted to people in accessory dwelling units, or there's a car share program like Zipcar or Gig Car, then no parking is required for those ADUs. So I'm going to talk about what is kind of mandatory in single-family zones as well as multifamily zones. So essentially, in a single-family zone, a homeowner can have one attached accessory dwelling unit or attached junior accessory dwelling unit, and they can also have one detached accessory dwelling unit. So you could go from 1 unit to as many as 3 units on that single-family site. On the multifamily zone, it's a little different. You can convert areas into livable space that had previously not been livable space. So that could be basements, garages, storage rooms, boiler rooms, et cetera. And you can allow just 1 or up to 25% of the total units in the building. So if you had a 4-unit building, you could have 1 accessory dwelling unit within that structure. In addition to that, you can have 2 detached ADUs. So again, a more sizable increase in multifamily zones. The other thing that's important to point out is if there is a non-conforming situation on the property. Like, for example, if there's a structure that does not comply with current setbacks, you cannot require the property owner to fix that before approving their accessory dwelling unit. You can't require fire sprinklers on it unless the primary structure has fire sprinklers. Again, like we talked about, you have to require a rental term of 30 days or longer. For small accessory dwelling units, less than 750 square feet, no impact fees. And again, for ones that are attached, there's no connection fees. And if they're detached, the utility fees have to be their share of the burden for the overall lot in terms of utilities. So wanted to go over our current regulations and the regulations that have been put in place by the state. So the big one is the minimum lot size. Right now, we can no longer require a minimum lot size, whereas previously it was 6,000 citywide, and in the historic district it ranged from 6,000 to 7,000, depending on which area of the historic district you're in. Again, the maximum size we limited to 1,200 square feet. We can actually set lower limits if the city chooses to, of 850 and 1,000, but that's as low as we can go. Again, I talked about this already. Again, we're already doing these at staff level, so this would continue that. The number would increase to 2 per parcel in a single-family zone, and then to shorten the review time to 60 days. Again, I talked about the setbacks and the parking. The height, we could restrict it to less than 16 feet. We don't currently do that right now. It's 35 feet or no higher than the main home, or in the historic district, it's 5 feet taller than the main home. Again, I've talked about owner occupancy. We don't have any restrictions currently on rental units, but we, you know, we cannot allow short-term rentals now. And we don't allow garage conversions, but we would have to under the new law. So in terms of next steps, like I said, staff is working on a ordinance to make sure that we're in compliance with state law and then address those standards that we want to be specific to the city of Folsom and include those in there as well for your review and approval. We're going to be going tomorrow night to the Historic District Commission and the Planning Commission and having expanded discussion on that. We expect to have a complete ordinance in February, and we'll be doing a presentation to the commissions in mid to late February for their recommendation, and then returning to you in late February or in March, and then it'll be effective 30 days after adoption. So since it's an ordinance, there'll be 2 hearings, a first reading and a second reading, and then 30 days after that it'll go into effect. So right around April, it would go into effect. So with regard to questions, I'm sure you may have a lot. I've got some specific ones for you that I'd like to put up to think about. These are things that staff's been looking at is, you know, what do you like or not like about some of the accessory dwelling units that you've seen, not only in the historic district, but throughout the city? Do you want to include additional design standards for them? In the historic district, there is some guidance that is in not only in the code, but in the historic design and development guidelines, which is what we rely upon there. But some of it is rather narrow and looks about architectural treatments rather than things like massing and size and items like that. One of the questions that has come up is, should we have different standards, design standards for the historic district, given that it's a unique area of the city? One of the things that we've heard back from folks is concern about accessory dwelling units on top of large garages. And so do we want to continue that practice, or do we want to limit that? So keep in mind, a 2-car garage is roughly around 400 to 440 square feet. We can't limit an accessory dwelling unit to that small. So that's, you know, something to consider. And then another question is, how important is parking for accessory dwelling units? Do we want to see that outside of transit areas and outside of the historic district, some standard in there that requires, because we can require no more than one space, uncovered space per ADU. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Desmond. Any questions?
Yeah. Some of those questions that you asked seem like they were already answered and that we can't restrict them. So if you could put the questions back up.
Yeah, sure. I'll put those back up. Sorry about that.
So given the changes in state law, it looks like we don't have the ability to say a lot about any of this. So if we can't, I'm not sure how we enforce design standards, given that it has to be ministerial review.
So with design
And
standards.
the same question, frankly, goes for the parking.
Yeah. So right now, we currently require 1 parking space per ADU. So we can either, if
An off-street parking space.
do you recall? Yeah, an off-street parking space. Then, so the question would be, do we want to continue that, or do we want to relax our standards further? Because we're allowed to continue that outside of transit areas, so half mile within a transit area, and then outside of the historic district. I'm not aware of Zipcar being prevalent in our neighborhoods or
I'm not
other
aware of
car share
Zipcar anywhere in Folsom, but.
Yeah,
So the point is that we can't do anything about it in the historic district,
correct.
which frankly is where it's likely to be a bigger problem. And historically, we haven't seen a lot of ADUs other than garage conversions, all of which have been really controversial and fought in the neighborhoods outside of the historic district. So basically, all of those things that we previously disapproved of, we can't disapprove of anymore. The only thing that we could do is require outside the historic district and away from transit system, the light rail systems, requiring the parking, which in most of Folsom is really not an issue.
So,
But how do we enforce design standards if it's only ministerial review?
so what staff would develop would be design standards where the project either meets them or it doesn't meet them. It's literally kind of a checklist that staff would use. So for example, does the ADU have a similar design and style to the primary residence? Yes or no?
Well, but we already have that problem in the historic district because the people that are building them say, yes, it looks like the rest of my house, and there's people sitting in the audience that I'm guessing are going to speak tonight to say, no, that's not true. So, and part of the problem is that we have, including the author of the original historic district guidelines that never turned into standards 20 years ago. So is that what we're going to do? We're going to go back to those?
Councilmember Howell, I'd like to just add on to what Desmond's saying. I think part of it is making those standards that potentially are shalls or may be a little unclear in the DDGs or in the standards, and coming up with clear kind of checklist items for how those get tackled. And I think we're going to get into more discussion about that with the commissions tomorrow, but we do have some ideas about that, how we might modify or enhance some of the existing ones to make it really clear and take out any ambiguity so that it is a clear-cut checklist
Turn the
decision.
existing guidelines into actual standards?
Some of them, where they can be, and I don't know that we need to get into the level of detail, because ultimately this, those solutions are going to come back to the city council for consideration.
Right, and I'm not trying to get that far down the rabbit hole, but I'm just pointing out that you're asking general questions, and in many instances, we have no control over them.
And I think these questions are put up just as a way of saying, these are the kinds of things we're going to be asking of the community and discussing with the commission. And we do have some wiggle room on some of these items. For example, we have maximum allowances for the size of structures that exceed what the state would allow us to do. So does the community want us to reduce those maximum sizes to meet the state law? And we don't have to, but we certainly can, right? So those are the kinds of questions we're going to be asking the community, and we're putting them up there for you this evening in case you want to provide some input or comments on them. But certainly all of this is going to be coming back to you with the benefit of the community input and the recommendations of your commissions.
My only suggestion is that when you go to the commission, I know there's people from the Historic District Commission in the room tonight, but when you go back to those commissions, the whole point in this presentation tonight was to let us know that kind of like the state's taken over and we don't have anywhere near the control that we used to have. And I just want it to be very, very clear that this is not the time that we can make the standards more stringent, because we're basically losing control.
In very few cases, we can make them more stringent, but you're right. In the vast majority, we will not. We will relinquish control.
Well, can I
Go
say?
ahead.
I sort of different. I'm not giving up control that easy without asking for a waiver or justification for why, especially in the historic district. I'm very concerned. I don't live there, but I spend time there. And I see over the years, 11 years to 12 years that I'm working on this council, I'm seeing a deterioration of the historical aspect of that area. And if we continue to just accept what the state sends down without at least trying to ask and spell out why, with justification in our view, and the neighbors' view, and the people that live there, and the historic aspect of the group, the organizations we have that are responsible for preservation of our history, then we're not doing our job. We're just sitting up here collecting a paycheck, and that's wrong. Okay? Now, they may come back and say, forget it. But we should ask. We should not just roll over and accept what they send us, okay? In my mind, I look at this as like a concrete jungle that they're giving us. This city has more aesthetics than what that rules are coming down to us. Okay, I understand there's a crisis as far as the state level is concerned with the amount of housing, especially affordable housing. I understand that. But that doesn't mean there are certain areas of your town that you spend time trying to preserve that you should just give it up without asking for relief. You know, it's easy for the guys on top to say nothing when nobody asks them, but they'll be challenged. But we have to do some homework, and you have to do that, which you're going to do with your outreach. You're going to collect data of the input from the people that are affected by what these changes are going to be, okay? My concern, and I've mentioned to you yesterday when we had a discussion, if you make these ADUs so much different in Old Town, in particular what I'm talking about, the rest of the town's pretty new in most places. You can make a new ADU and it looks like the regular house that they're in. But in Old Town, that's not true in many areas. And if you make it so it's so modern and effective and doesn't really look like the house that was there to begin with, then you're just setting up for some period of time in the future to destroy the old house and put a new house, and now you get a new site. And I think that's awful. Even consider that without a fight. You know, we can lose the fight, but not to make the fight is not acceptable in my mind at all. Okay, so I know what Carrie's talking about. I know what we had discussion. If there's a little wiggle room to try to maintain the historical aspect of the Old Town, then we should wiggle in there. Okay, without any exception. If we think we are cut out with something that doesn't apply, that will hurt Old Town, then we should go up for an exception. You know, remember, folks, when we had an incident in the utility where it was insisting we have a certain truck we used. That was mandatory until we went up and asked, and it came back it wasn't mandatory. It was our discretion here. And that could happen again in here, okay? And so I just feel that I'm not so easy to accept that we have to accept everything they give without some kind of justification to change it. Okay, sure, we say, oh, well, maybe we're wasting our time. Well, that's time well wasted then, because we may succeed in doing it. So I haven't got all the part. Now I will ask you, in my case, to provide me copies of your presentation, because it's much more detailed and more clear than what I have in the staff report.
Okay.
I feel it's much better from what I saw yesterday and what I saw in your presentation.
Sure.
So, and I would imagine the rest of you might want the same thing, because it's much more detailed than the staff report. But I'm just one person out of 5 here, but I just feel very strongly, and I would hope that people that, as they go through your outreach to the historic and to the committees, the planning department and the HDC and the areas, that you pick up the same input. Because otherwise we're destroying our town, and there's no reason to do that. Just because people on top want to increase the availability. I want affordable housing. We need more affordable housing in this town. For the people that run our town for us. So we enjoy going to the restaurants. We enjoy buying and shopping in our town. People that can't live here because we don't have a house for them. Yeah, we need more of that. But you cannot say that we're allowing ADUs in Old Town that are going way beyond affordable housing prices to be considered improving affordable housing for the people that need it. No, it's an economic boom for people that own the site. Okay? So I just think that this not take, as a commission or a council, too much acceptance that we have to listen to the people on top without challenging them. That's all I got to say.
Councilman-
Madam Mayor, and
Yes.
if I may, Honorable Vice Mayor made a very good point, and we've had these discussions many times before, and I don't think anybody here disagrees with him, except it is not how this law works. And I just want to make sure that the expectation, the proper expectation is set for the community and also for the council and also the commissioners. If we do not comply with the state requirements, how this works is the state law automatically takes over. The local jurisdiction's ordinances are null and void. And the state law does not provide for any design standards. So any design can come in as long as they satisfy the standards under the state law, they get to be built with no discretion at all. If you want to maintain local control, the local control we still have is to somehow come up with some kind of objective design standards, and it's a term of art defined by the new legislature, so that nobody will have any discretion as to guess what that means. If the design standard is met, it is met. There's no challenge to that. If we do, this is not like the military. There's no ETP. There's no exception to policy. If we do not comply with the law, the state law operates, and we get to be fined by the state $10,000 per unit. That's the penalty. That is how, and we're not unique. You know this. A lot of cities up and down the state are facing the same challenges. We're not unique.
How do you get around this? I'll tell you how you get around it. You comply with the law, but you go in and propose a change to the law.
You
Okay,
can.
so then we don't have to worry about the conservative approach you were taking. I'm not saying that we violate the law. If we have to comply, we comply, but we can go up and say, these things are hurting this particular city, which we're probably not unique.
That's correct,
Okay.
and that's why we have
So
lobbied.
we can comply so that you don't get a $10,000 fine, but at the same time, we can go up and say, should be changed.
Absolutely
and ask
true.
them to change it.
Correct.
So that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying we don't do it, but I'm saying we go up and tell them they need to change this in our case.
Somebody
Wait,
give Ernie Kevin Kiley's phone number.
Well, Desmond, I think what might be helpful is, can you tell us what we still do have control over? Can we control the architecture, the colors, the materials? You mentioned parking outside a historic district or away from transit. What are the things that we can control?
So the things that we can control is we can control the look and feel of those, so the architectural details. The only caveat that I would say to that is that we don't want to put so many regulations or so many standards that it defeats the original intent of the bill, which is for these to be a more affordable housing product than a single family, than a typical single family home. So, but we can say things like you have to have, a certain number of materials. You can't just clad everything in stucco. You can have, you need to have, you need to have at least one window on each wall. You need to have a contrasting trim. You need to have, there are things that we can go into the detail on. As Pam had mentioned, in the historic district, the design and development guidelines are a good start, and there's things that we need to look at in there that we can take that are currently shalls and put them into standards, but there are also other things that we should consider as well. And just to make clear, we can't take things that provide general or vague guidance to someone and say, you have to meet this, because it really should be either they meet it or they don't meet it. And that's why they're calling them standards. We can still point people to our design guidelines, but they're not bound by them. They are bound by standards.
Okay. Councilmember Gaylord and then Councilmember Kozlowski. We'll end with the architect.
Yeah, and I think that's the genesis of this whole thing, is to take this back, take it to the commissions and get the public input and develop those, the checklist items that we can play within. I did have a question on, so I'm interested in when that comes back. I did want a copy of the presentation. Sure. And, I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying, is that you can't just give it up. You got to figure out what you can and can't do, but we are in California. So I appreciate what you put here, and I like the ending with a train of thought with the questions. It puts me in kind of the right mind to think, hey, yeah, what would I like to see? And it's going to be interesting to hear back the feedback from the commissions. But as far as the transit with a half mile, what is that? Is that only RT, or does that include other transit options like bus stops and all that stuff?
It's not entirely clear in the legislation, so we need to reach out to HCD, the State Housing Community Development Department, to see whether it's, traditionally it's meant our light rail stations because those have more frequent service. Our bus service, which is often once an hour, does not qualify. So we need to get some clarification on that, because obviously has a much bigger impact if it's our bus stops than if it's our light rail stations.
Well, and that's kind of where my thought process is finding those little pieces of information that we can clarify, and if not, maybe even exploit on saying, hey, this falls within that realm, so we can do this in this certain area. So I'd like to see more back on that aspect. Okay. But I appreciate all the info, and thank you for the time you put into it.
Councilmember Kozlowski.
Okay, I have several questions. And for our city attorney, I guess first, you mentioned that there's a my first question I wrote down is, what are the penalties for noncompliance? How do you define noncompliance, given that there's 5 different bills? Are they tied to the same set of penalties, or are they by each one of those?
Correct. One set of penalties for now. As you might have remembered in Desmond's presentation, one of the last piece of this whole updating process is assuming you adopt a modification to the city's municipal code pertaining to ADUs. We are still required by law to submit your adoption to the state for their approval. They can say, yes, you comply, or they can say, no, you do not. In the meantime, let's hope all the applications comply with what you desire and you set in your municipal code. But in egregious cases where we simply do not follow the state law and we somehow prohibit or interfere with someone's ability to construct ADU pursuant to state law, it's $10,000 per unit.
So hypothetical, unit in the historic district comes before the ministers, and they decide, yeah, it's worth $10,000 for us to not approve this one. Is that an option, or is it a $10,000 penalty and then it's approved?
It's approved by state law.
Okay,
Correct.
so it's really
And then you
just
have to
its
pay $10,000.
approval is the penalty.
Yes, sir.
Okay, got it. So AB 587 addresses the separate ownership of an ADU. Does that open the door to the possibility that a developer can purchase the right to build an ADU from each and every homeowner in a subdivision or the historic district?
As Desmond indicated, it's not an easy process. There are many requirements in order for that to happen. And we do not anticipate that this is going to happen. But of course, under the state law, it's foreseeable that a developer, a nonprofit developer, who is able to meet the requirements set forth by state law, which includes affordability restriction, deed, covenant recording in a deed that runs with the land, and so on and so forth, it's foreseeable in that kind of situation, the ADU may be sold, may be allowed to be sold separately.
So once it exists, it can be sold?
Correct.
A developer couldn't
But not
purchase
just anybody.
the ability to build an ADU?
You're absolutely right. But it's not anybody who builds an ADU may then sell the ADU separately. It's only for a nonprofit developer, and meeting those kind of special conditions.
So the hypothetical perfect owner exists. You could end up with somebody effectively
Owning
developing a whole suite or collection of ADUs in a neighborhood or throughout the city.
Correct.
I would just caution, just to add to
I'm
what's-
trying to hypothetical the worst case here.
Yeah,
I'm just
but
trying to understand
what I would
this.
caution is they have to deed restrict these for 30 years. So
Yeah.
removes a lot of the profit incentive on this, so
But they're being built by nonprofits in the first place.
Yeah, my hypothetical question is more related to the fact of the matter is that the reason that we're seeing a increasing number of, or a number of ADUs being built, particularly in our historic district, is that they have value, a lot of value. And there may be enough value in there even for a nonprofit developer who may be motivated by other egalitarian reasons to build a lot of ADUs in Folsom. That's why I asked the question. It's just potential. I just wanted to know if there was, what the limits were on that.
Plus, you could theoretically go in as John Q. Builder, not as a nonprofit, build a bunch of them, and then buy them.
Yeah, that's
they're
effectively what I'm
basically
saying in
existing.
terms of buying the right to own an ADU on a piece of property without having to subdivide the property.
I'll certainly double check, but I don't think that kind of scenario would be allowed under the legislation. It is really intended, whether it truly works that way or not, it is intended for, again, long-term deed-restricted, affordable second units that are built by a nonprofit housing developer.
Sure, but we have nonprofit housing developers building apartment complexes, which are effectively the same. They're not going to not be apartments at some point within a reasonable amount of time, right? So it's just a scattered apartment complex potentially.
Plus, this stuff hasn't been tested yet, so it's another potential unintended consequence of how this could go even further badly.
Yeah. So getting back to just some more technical things. The setback requirement that it can't be made to be more than 4 feet for an ADU.
That is correct.
Which was loud and clear. Does it restrict your ability to have the existing principal residents have different setbacks?
No, it
Or
doesn't.
does it become effectively a 4-foot setback for everything?
No, it does not affect the primary residence, so the primary residence still must meet the setbacks associated with that zoning district.
Okay.
But if it's either an attached ADU or a detached ADU, then the 4-foot setback comes into play.
Okay. It's interesting to me, and this is more a comment than a question, that the existing requirement in the state building codes for sprinklers is accepted here, and bringing existing structures into conformity with the existing zoning ordinances, which we still do have control over, are accepted as well. I get the desire to remove barriers for ADUs and things like that, but that just seems kooky to me, given the push for more stringent building codes. With regard to the parking permit issue, if we were, and again, this is hypothetical, we do not have a parking permit requirement anywhere in the city, but if we did have a parking permit required for homeowners in a certain district of the city, what are the limitations with regard to that ADU? How does that work again? I think you kind of got to it, but say a given principal residence is required to have either 2 on-street parking spaces or purchase 2 parking permits for street parking. If you introduce the ADU, we can require an additional parking space, or we can only require it if they're outside of a transit zone.
So if there is a parking permit requirement,
Yeah.
and we allow the ADU to get the parking permit, then they can, which seems kind of silly, but then we can require that they have on-street, off-street parking.
So if a permit is required in that part of the city, you can require that they acquire a permit or provide an off-street parking space.
Correct.
Okay, got
Yes.
it. Just wanted to make sure I understood that.
But if they cannot, if the permit is required, But they, because they're in an ADU and not the owners of the property, cannot get that permit. Then we cannot require them to have a parking space.
Yeah, so there's no requirement. If there's permits invoked on that area and they can't get a permit, we can't require them to, or they can still build the ADU without that parking spot.
Yes, that's correct.
So it's almost like the permit hinders the ADU.
Got it. Okay. Is it possible?
Unless the permit is offered to the occupant of ADU.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Councilmember Getaway.
Okay. In the instance where we can require a permit or an off-street parking space, is there any limit on what that permit can cost?
It doesn't speak to that at all in the
Okay,
legislation.
so $10,000 would be fine. Again, I'm hypothetically. I'm grasping at straws a little bit, but is there an or missing in the one attached accessory dwelling unit and one detached accessory dwelling unit, and the intention was not to allow 3 units per site?
No, there is not an or missing.
Okay.
It is intentional that there be,
Mistakes like that have happened before.
that we allow for up to 3 units.
And they get
on a-
fixed in trailer bills and stuff.
Surprised there are not more mistakes.
Okay. So to the extent that we can introduce dimensional limitations or, I guess, prescriptive requirements for the design of a structure that don't conflict with any of these prescribed ones that are in here, we're okay. Okay. So that being said, I think I'd have to spend a little time sort of testing this out, but I think that couple of things. One, introducing, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but introducing a style guide that has more pictures than prescriptive descriptions of things, I think will make it easier for people to shop for something that suits the neighborhood. Okay, because lots of people like to look at home builder magazines and take things from other places, and I think particularly for the historic district, in order to subtly guide people towards things that suit the district better than don't suit the district, a pictorial type style guide would be really useful. I think that wherever we can, holding the height limitation to this 16 feet will help with some of the oversized stuff that's been bothering some folks. And I think the one, if you can take something good from all of this, the prohibition against prohibiting garage conversions is actually a good thing. So you can capture some square footage that is within an existing building footprint. I think that's a good thing in the context of all of these changes. And the more that we can actually encourage the garage conversions, I think that helps with the massing issue that we've encountered. So I would, to your questions that you asked, setting the dimensional limitations at their smallest allowable level is preferable to me. And I think introducing the height limitation particularly is a good thing. And I think that to the extent that we can, with a style guide or by prescriptive means, specify roof styles or particular roof pitches, I think both of those things also can help to bring the overall mass of some of these structures down to a more human scale.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, we do have some members of the public who would like to speak to this item. If you want to speak to it, but you haven't filled out a speaker card yet, there are blue cards on that back table there, and if you give it to Officer Salvo, we'll also get you up here. But the clerk will call the names, please.
So we have 3 speakers so far. Our first speaker will be Mike Brenkowitz. Mike will be followed by Loretta Hedinger, and Loretta will be followed by Beth Kelly.
Welcome.
Good evening, everybody. So I wrote this a couple days ago. I'd like to read to you, but there's a couple things I'd like to say. First of all, these are restrictions statewide. Has anybody looked into if there's any special circumstances for just historic districts? You know, they may say, hey, well, you know, we want this, but in historic districts, we'll let you get away with this. Second thing I wanted to say before I get to my statement is, I'm a licensed contractor. Everybody's going to complain about the cost of stuff. That's how we build stuff cheap. It is not that much more expensive to put a little gingerbread and nice wood on a house and make it look historic. That is a complete nonsense. I mean, honestly, you could build it historic. It is not going to stop people from their abilities to do that. But anyway, so I just wanted to say that. But Folsom has a unique and rare treasure. Our historic district is authentic. We have original houses and buildings dating back to the mid-1800s. People come from all around to admire historic architecture and spend quality time in a period long past. The historic district is a huge part of Folsom's identity and provides Folsom with a draw. Citizens can enjoy the many businesses, restaurants, and museums in an atmosphere very hard to find in other cities. This area has long been protected by the Historic District Design and Development Guidelines. These guidelines set standards to protect our treasure and to ensure that new developments fit within the historic architectural standards. Basically, they preserve our history. Modern developments have no place in a historic community. Recently, the state of California has imposed a new set of standards on secondary dwelling units in regards to size and setbacks. These standards are completely silent in regards to look, design, and construction techniques. These are left completely up to local jurisdiction. There is no reason the city cannot require that secondary structures comply with the look and historic integrity of the area. Soon you will be incorporating a new city code that includes design, development, look, parking, and other guidelines within the historic district. I respectfully request that you honor our history and keep our design guidelines basically intact. Future generations deserve the right to enjoy Folsom's rich heritage and architectural past. I also request that the citizens, business owners, Historic Preservation League, and Historic Society be given the right to oversee these guidelines and allowed to comment before they become code. Preserving our history is up to you. Please protect our past. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
Next speaker is Loretta Hedinger, and Loretta will be followed by Beth Kelly.
As you might guess, all of us speaking tonight are talking about the historic district. The recent bills have just shown a spotlight on a problem that has been growing, and we've raised it to the city several times now. Ministerial isn't working to protect our historic district, and I don't believe that it's impossible for a ministerial approval to work. But what needs to happen is that we need to have historic architectural experts preparing these standards and then have them be the ones who are the ministers making the call. I don't care whether it's the same person, but it needs to be someone with historic architectural training. Planners are not trained to do that. The only reason it worked for 20 years was because we had so many staff people who cared to learn a lot, and we had the discretionary approval power of the commission. So to change it to a ministerial method, I believe can be made to happen, but it's going to require more knowledge going into the standards than is presently there. I think maybe, as several of the council members said, Folsom is not a timid, passive place. We've been leaders for the 40 years that I have observed and the 150 years that I've read about. and we were one of the first historic districts in the state. Actually, these numerical standards don't scare me that much. Folsom has had a lot of anomalies in the historic district. What's a few more? What I am concerned is about the design. And I believe the ministerial can work easier here for the historic district than perhaps some other places, because we have the design standard that it has to be from 1950 or older. If somebody comes in with a hodgepodge of historic pieces and puts them together, that's not historic design. And we need to have historic architecture expertise. On the numerical standards, 1,200 square feet doesn't result in affordable housing in historic Folsom. It results in expensive housing. So I'm in favor of what you said about putting the upper limits in place. One thing that we've not used enough of is peer pressure. I believe it's pretty important to let people know where the value of their home comes from. It doesn't come particularly from what they do on their site. That might be 3 dwelling units that would bring in lots of money. But the neighbors will have their property values reduced, because the thing that makes the historic district work, the reason it has been succeeding for 20 years, is that everybody is complying with those historical standards. And when it's not happening, even though you might have 3 units on your property, you and your neighbors will all be suffering a decline, because the quality of life will be deteriorated. It will no longer be a historic district that is the heart of Folsom. And I think we all know that that is our heart. People always refer to the small town character as one of the main things they love about Folsom. It's not just the schools, and it's not just the wonderful recreation, but the heart of Folsom. And that's why I'm not so afraid about whether we will be able to assimilate the people south of Highway 50. Folsom has withstood these events through the years, and it's going to be good again, but we have to take this problem by the horns and solve it.
Okay, thank you, Loretta.
Thank you.
Is it appropriate for me to ask a question of Loretta?
Sure.
Or should I hold that? Can I ask you a question? You piqued at an idea in my head. How do you account, in your mind, your opinion, how do you account for the fact that there are styles of construction, residential construction particularly, that maybe are different than what is typical in the historic district, but are no less historic?
We have always said that that was fine.
Okay.
If it was something that was built in Folsom or could have been built in Folsom.
So a relatively severely modern style residence that may have been built in 1930 would be okay with you? This is not a test. I'm just curious of your opinion.
It is okay with me, depending on where in the district, because our most historic ones are in the Figueroa sub-area.
Sure.
So it would not be appropriate in that one. But in the central sub-area, if you drive around historic Folsom, you will see some old things that are kind of odd.
Assuredly, yeah. Okay, and then second, like sort of follow-up question.
No.
And I appreciate your commentary all the time, so this is why I'm asking you these questions. If you have an existing structure within the historic district that is of no particular importance style-wise and not decorated in any particular style, how do you account for what the accessory dwelling unit should look like? And then I have a follow-up question actually for staff, which I'll ask later, which is what style requirements can we place on an existing structure if they introduce an ADU?
Well, first off, Folsom's Historic District was not established because of our fancy architecture or our specifically designed exteriors. It was established to be a small town preserved in the heart of a big new city. And so even the little boring ones contribute to that because that's what small towns were.
Sure.
They were a mix of things that people were able to build, like the Cone Mansion, and things that are the tiny little accessory dwelling units that have already existed there. The thing that divides is whether it was authentic historic design of the period. Because, you can, one little leak in a dam, if not attended to, makes the dam fail. And these little leaks of non-authentic design will make the historic district fail as a historic district. It may still be a nice neighborhood, but it won't be the heart of Folsom anymore.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth, come on up. You've been very patient. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to back up what everyone else has been saying, but I like some of the comments that I've heard from the council. I'm really pleased, especially Mike. I like the idea of pictures. That's a good idea. And it's kind of ironic that the pictures that we saw in the presentation on ADUs were adorable, cute little cottages. I'm sure that didn't escape you, but that's not what we've seen built in the last couple of years. And HPL has had a lot of comments on some of the large ADUs that have clogged the alleys, and they're probably a fire hazard. I don't think trucks can sometimes get down those. So that's something to think about. We definitely would, HPL is working on comments. We've analyzed all the laws, and we're going to help the HDC with some of our input. And we do believe that the city should try to regulate as much as possible the items they can, which Mike's already detailed. And then the city should prepare a new ordinance that regulates ADUs in the historic district and submit that to the Department of Housing and Community Development. And we're sort of against the three-car garages with second-story ADUs in the historic district. And we should obviously really, really keep working on this parking problem. And also look at other subdivisions. It's ironic that the presentation on south of 50 is right before this one, because those giant houses are taking up all those lots, and there's no room for an ADU there unless it's the next gen houses, which are certainly not affordable houses. Anyway, we will be helping y'all work on this because, again, we definitely want to preserve the historic character. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm sure there will be a lot of discussion to come, but we do need to move on. Desmond, excellent job. Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Your next item tonight is your consent calendar. The consent calendar is items that are considered routine and may be approved by one motion.
Does anybody have anything they'd like to pull?
I'll move consent.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Gaylord?
Yes.
Howell?
Yes.
Kozlowski?
Yes.
Sheldon?
Yes.
And Aquino.
Yes. Next item, please.
Your next item this evening is nomination of City of Folsom representative to the Citizens Advisory Committee for Folsom Prison. So California Penal Code mandates that the formation of a Citizens Advisory Committee for each jurisdiction that has a prison. And the purpose of the committee is to improve the public's understanding of corrections programs and possibly to suggest ways to improve and participate in inmate programming. The city has by state law, the city has 2 representatives to this committee. You have 1 vacancy. 2 applications were received, one from Scott Bailey and one from Sandra Munoz Braidman. And so it would be in order for the council to consider those 2 for nomination. Carrie.
Okay, and as always, we have more qualified candidates than we have spots, so thank you to both for applying. These are not specific to any council member, right? We can each take anyone?
Yes.
Okay.
If you
Gotta
just
sign it.
put your initials or signature on it. So Councilmember Gaylord votes for Sandra Munoz Braidman. Vice Mayor Sheldon votes for Scott Bailey. Mayor Aquino votes for Sandra Munoz Braidman. Councilmember Kozlowski votes for Sandra Munoz Braidman. And Councilmember Howell votes for Scott Bailey. So it looks like Sandra Braidman is appointed, or is nominated. So staff will forward this nomination to the prison warden for final consideration and appointment.
She's excellent.
Okay. Next item, please.
So your next item this evening is item number 8. This is a presentation regarding the newly formed Sacramento Homeless Policy Council. This is a new council that's been formed. The Sacramento Steps Forward is proposing the creation of this Homeless Policy Council with the purpose of providing a broad-based collaborative and strategic leadership on Sacramento's response to the crisis of homelessness. We'll be receiving a presentation tonight from Lisa Bates from Sacramento Steps Forward. And at the conclusion of her presentation, your council will consider appointing a representative and an alternate to this policy council.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Aquino and members of the council. Lisa Bates with Sacramento Steps Forward. Appreciate the opportunity to present to you a emerging concept, which is the idea of establishing a regional homeless policy council. And we're seeking your participation in that council. What I'd like to do briefly is just give you an overview of the purpose and the membership of the council and what it's trying to achieve, and then hopefully you'll deliberate your participation. Just a little bit about Sacramento Steps Forward. We are a nonprofit that was established in 2011 to be the lead recipient of federal funds that come to this region to address homelessness. We work with a 25-member board of representatives of jurisdictions, and you may want to actually consider if some of your staff would like to participate. We are opening up for nominations to be on that board. But it also includes representatives of homeless providers, law enforcement, healthcare industry. And really, we work with that board throughout the year to identify approaches to better plan for ending homelessness in our region. We also, as you all very well know, conduct the point-in-time count. The 2019 count is referenced quite a bit in the paper, including this weekend. We also collect a lot of data around providers that are doing work to house people within our community, and so a lot of that information is collected and shared to help inform what's going on in our overall system. I don't think I need to remind you about the dire need that we have. We're seeing it every day in our communities. It's a daily conversation in most communities, and certainly we now have the governor's budget and his efforts to also continue to put out resources to communities to help address homelessness. So the Policy Council was really an idea that was born from my board, Matt Kiesling, who's my chairperson, as well as some of the representatives from the Board of Supervisors and the mayor, particularly in the City Council. And the idea is really that we need to come together as a region and think about homelessness from a regional perspective. And so the idea is to start with this pilot effort of bringing together representatives from across the jurisdictions in Sacramento County to really start to build more of a broad-based collaborative and strategic leadership. It was really important to the Board of Supervisors that all the cities be invited to this council, and so that is in process. And many of the cities have started to identify who their representatives will be. And if that's important for you to know, I can certainly share which representatives have already been identified. But really, it's to come together, provide shared discussion on policy direction for solutions to address homelessness, to the extent possible, how we can begin to align, particularly our coordination of systems and policies and approaches, and basically to accelerate knowledge across the region. It was pointed out that there's a lot of things that are happening in the suburban areas that maybe the city and even the county are not aware of. So creating that space where we can hear how homelessness and how you approach it is different in each respective community. I did just want to say that I mentioned the continuum of care. That's a place where community is coming together to address homelessness. We've also established a public entity funders collaborative that is working on common standards and ways in which they approach funding certain programs and initiatives. And then the Policy Council is this next level, because we don't have a place where the elected leadership is coming together on a regular basis to address thinking about homelessness. We are proposing that it be 12 members, 2 members from the Board of Supervisors, 2 from the Sacramento City Council. Today, they just approved Mayor Steinberg and Councilmember Schneer, and then representatives from each suburban community, Citrus Heights, Elk Grove, Galt, Ileton, Folsom, and Rancho Cordova. I will say Citrus Heights and Rancho Cordova have selected their representatives, and Elk Grove will be doing that later this month. We also would include the chair of our continuum of care, and currently that's a representative from Elk Grove, Sarah Bontrager, and then my board chair, which is Matt Kiesling, would also be represented on the council. The council doesn't have any authority or decision-making. It's not taking power away from any of the respective jurisdictions, but it's the start of trying to bring the community together. We anticipate meeting 3 times a year, hopefully starting in March, but we'll have to see, dependent on folks' schedules. And we've left the topics and even the format a little bit broad, because we want to form the council and then have a discussion with the representatives of the council on how they want to form their agenda and what topics do we want to tackle as a region and have discussions about. So here are some suggested topics. We've received feedback from a lot of the different jurisdictions on what they would like to have as potential topics, but that will be shaped once the council is formed. It's anticipated that our entity, Sacramento Steps Forward, in collaboration with the public funders, will be staffing and helping support the venue and the discussions. So essentially, I think that's my last slide, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does anybody have any specific questions about this council? This is not a general discussion on homelessness or Sacramento Steps Forward. Councilmember Gaylor, do you have a question?
No, I just wanted to thank you for everything you guys do, and I think this is a great idea, so thank you.
Councilmember Kozlowski.
I do. Was it, who is the Funders Collaborative?
So it is it's representatives of public funders that provide funding for homelessness. So right now it includes the city of Sacramento, the county, Rancho, Elk Grove, Citrus Heights. I think Folsom could be wrapped into the Funders Collaborative. So it's a staff level collaborative.
Okay.
We also have representatives from SETA, SACOG included now as well.
Okay, so, and are you, is the staffing for having the activities of this council coming from staff that already exists and funding that already exists, or is it staff growth necessary and funding growth necessary to gather these elected officials together and have a discussion?
It's a great question. Initially, we are using existing staff, but we did acknowledge in our report to the county that at some point there'll probably be a need to grow staff and potentially resources. But I do think that there are some private funders that are interested in this and who are likely to step in and help support the organization.
And then last question, is there a level of homelessness where you perceive that you could dissolve this?
You mean
when have you beat the crisis?
When we've been successful?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the exit strategy from this? Because oftentimes councils for all types of reasons get formed and then they persist.
Right.
Indefinitely.
Yeah, well, it would be a great thing if we could get to a point where we no longer have to be in business. And I do think that the collaboration and the system integration is part of the answer. I think we have a lot of resources in the system. We just need to get ourselves aligned better and be more effective in how we use those resources. Not to say we don't need
Gotcha.
more, but.
And then I actually have one last thing. Was there consideration to include the city of Roseville into this? Because even though they're outside of Sacramento County, they are integral to the suburban experience of Sacramento.
There has been conversations about like not only Roseville, but also West Sacramento. And so I think what our answer has been, let's first try to make it good in Sacramento County, and then we can go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay.
Before, Lisa, I've got a question.
Okay.
What level of funding are you guys currently getting from the jurisdictions that are providing funding to date?
In terms of.
Ballpark.
You mean in terms of supporting us, Sacramento Steps Forward particularly? So our funding is derived from HUD money. So we administer about $20 million in resources, and we get admin from that funding. We also are recipient of the recent state funding, the HEAP, the CASH, the HAP fundings that are coming down. So we do derive some admin from that. But our biggest public funder is through Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency, and that was established back when the actual activities came out of the county to form the nonprofit. So that's where we receive administrative money that's been the same since the.
That administrative money comes from the Sacramento County?
Housing and Redevelopment Agency.
Okay, which is that part of?
It's a joint powers agency that is got members of the city of Sacramento and the county of Sacramento, the housing authority of the city and county.
So you get checks from the city of Sacramento and Sacramento County?
Through Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency.
Okay, but the money originates within the city of Sacramento and within Sac County?
Yes.
Okay, and you said that Elk Grove is already participating, and I think you said Rancho was thinking about it?
Right, and they're not necessarily funding us, but they're funding programs that address homelessness. It's not necessarily to fund us, but they are funding outreach programs or other programs that are helping to address homelessness. So we're not, it's not a requirement.
Well, as are we. I mean, the city of
Yes,
Folsom is spending
right.
money on that through
So I think it
you
would
guys,
be-
through the Navigator program. So do you know the extent of funding, as an example, and what other people are doing with it? Is Elk Grove doing stuff within Elk Grove?
Yes.
Rancho's doing stuff within Rancho? And so I guess we're already participating because we are in fact doing stuff within Folsom.
Right. So we'd like to have you included in the Funders Collaborative is what I am suggesting as part of this process as well.
So that would mean that all of the existing funding that's being spent would be spread throughout Sacramento County? Is that the objective at the end of the day?
Well, I think the objective is to look at how we are spending resources and make sure they're going to the right interventions. Most of the programs that are being funded do serve countywide. I think as you all are aware, with some of the state money, the HEAP money in particular, it required jurisdictions to declare a shelter crisis. And so those communities that did declare a shelter crisis could participate in that money. The most recent resources from the state do not require.
I'm sorry, could I back up for one more second? The shelter crisis requires that you actually have a shelter, I assume. That you have a shelter and that there's no beds available.
Well, it requires that you have a shelter crisis and that you're going to work to shelter people and that you're not going to do things contrary to, you basically are not going to try to move people along or.
No, the reason I'm asking the question is because the city of Sacramento, and this varies depending upon the day, there are existing shelters and the counties run shelters.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who else has run shelters. The city of Folsom, as a government agency, does not have a shelter. The only sheltering that happens in Folsom is through the faith-based community. It's
HARP
ongoing
program.
now, but it's 11 or 12-week situation.
Correct.
So from that standpoint, I guess we would always be in crisis because we don't have a shelter. So I think that may put us in certainly puts us in a different circumstance than the city of Sacramento and Sacramento County. I can't speak to Elk Grove or Rancho because I don't know what they are or not doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, each community is approaching their crisis a little bit differently.
Okay.
Okay, so Councilmember Gaylord has expressed an interest in representing us on the council. I have offered to be his alternate. If there is anybody else who would like to throw their hat in the ring, we will use the ballot voting method. But if nobody else is wanting to step up, then I think we can dispense with the ballot and just accept a nomination.
I make the
Or motion.
nomination for Roger and you as the alternate.
Second.
Third.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Gaylord?
Yes, and
Howell-
thank you.
Howell?
Yes.
Kozlowski?
Yes.
Sheldon?
Yes.
And Aquino.
Yes. Moving on.
Okay, so next is item number 9. This is a discussion on the proposed budget for fiscal year 2021. This is a preliminary discussion of budget priorities, requests, and expectations, along with direction to staff.
Okay, and Stacy, before you get started, I think the city manager has a couple comments.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to give a brief introduction to this item if I could. Although this is about the 15th time that I've been directly involved with the budget process for the city of Folsom as your staff member, it's only the second time I've overseen the budget process as your city manager. After my first go-around last year, I left the process feeling like we could improve a bit in terms of providing you as council members with an earlier opportunity to weigh in on your desires for the big picture before the draft budget gets too baked, so to speak. So if you feel like it seems early on in the calendar year to be talking about the budget, then you are right. Tonight is an extra budget workshop that we've added for the sole purpose of starting a conversation with you about the budget you'd like to see down the line. We've added this meeting to the budget schedule to allow you to provide feedback at the 30,000-foot level before we start filling in cells on an Excel spreadsheet. Stacy Tamani, our finance director, and I have put together some big picture questions for you that we hope will encourage and guide helpful dialogue that ultimately frames the draft budget document I will bring to you for your consideration in a few months. It is not at all our intent to put you on the spot tonight. We are merely planting seeds tonight. If you have input, great. But otherwise, we'd love to hear from you in the days following this meeting, when we come back on January 28th, and of course, anytime during the process. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Stacy, who will take you through her presentation and those big picture questions.
Thank you, Elaine. Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm Stacy Tamani, Finance Director, and as Elaine mentioned, this is just the first in our series of conversations and presentations that we're going to have for the upcoming fiscal year 20 and 21 budget. So I just wanted to start with a look at the schedule. This is our preliminary schedule. So tonight we're having this discussion, bringing you some questions. We'll bring the questions back on the 28th to get direction from you and to get your feedback after you've had some time to think about it. And then on the 25th is when I'll bring all of the financial projections and more of the financial information that you're used to. So that'll be the typical presentation that will be considered our first budget workshop. On the 28th, we'll bring the proposed operating and capital budget to you, and then have the public hearing on the 12th and hopefully the adoption on the 26th. So that's what we have so far. So tonight, I just wanted to bring you a couple of questions. I actually have 5. And before we get into that, I just wanted to give you a little bit of financial information. And this is the only graph that I'm going to have because tonight is just questions. So the general fund for the last 15 years, we've been slightly going up, as you can see. But revenues are flattening out. That's the blue line on the top. And expenditures always closely follow them. So the gap that we have in between the blue and the orange line, this is what we usually have to spend on one-time projects or allocate to our general fund reserve. And we expect that that will be very much the same for fiscal year 21. And those are what the questions are really addressing, is what do we want to do if we leave the budget pretty much the same with most of the same programs and priorities that you've had in the past. We have the gap between the blue line and the orange line, and what do we really want to do with that? And because we always have limited financial resources, we know it's a struggle to really weigh the demands and desires of the community and the ability of the city to finance solutions to those demands. So with your responses to the questions that I'm bringing forward tonight, we're hoping to get a clearer picture of your vision and your values, where you want to direct those shared limited resources, learn which demands and desires of the community top your list, and then encourage a discussion of options and trade-offs so that we can be sure to bring forward a budget that's very much in line with your priorities. So how can we include your vision and values and your priorities in the budget? Well, I believe that many are already included in the fiscal year 1920 adopted budget. So of course you can leave those in there if you choose. Other small dollar items will be prioritized and implemented when funds are available, or this is when the conversation will come up of trade-offs to other previously budgeted items. And then large dollar items, these will take a commitment by the council to multi-year appropriations so that we can start setting aside funding, sort of like a savings account, to be sure that these high priority projects do get completed because we're saving for them. So examples of those in the past have included setting aside money for the aquatic center renovation, fire station renovation. Future examples might be replacing the city hall roof, doing the HVAC replacement, or development of park sites that don't have specific funding already. So we'll move on to the 5 questions. So the first one relates to those big projects. What are your top 3 priorities that you'd like to begin setting aside funds for in the fiscal year 2021 budget in order to complete them in a future year? So we'd just like to know, what are the big ones that you want to start thinking ahead for so that we can begin appropriating money so that we can make sure that we have that set aside when the time comes. Our second question is, if revenues are projected to exceed budgeted expenditures, resulting in a budget surplus, are you more interested in using this money to contribute to the general fund reserve, increasing the fund balance, the rainy day fund, or are you more interested in allocating funds to one-time projects? So this is just getting a feel for what you value. Are you valuing getting that reserve balance up to where we really want it to be, or are you more interested in getting projects done at the end of the year that are your top priority? Question number 3, are there services or programs that the city's general fund is currently providing that you do not see as significantly valuable at this time and you'd like to scale back in order to use the funding elsewhere? So this is just if we have to have a trade-off, are there things that you think, maybe we don't want to do at this time so that you can do something different? And the mayor has asked for a listing of contracts that we're currently participating in, so we're going to get that to you so that you know department by department what we're spending the money on a detailed level so you can make some of these decisions.
And that would be a list of non-mandated recurring expenses.
Yes, thank you. Number 4, what is the one area in which the city can focus resources and efforts towards achieving specific results that will make the biggest difference? So to me, this is like your top value. When department heads are looking at their budgets and they have a decision between going one way or going another, they can filter that decision through this top value. So what's the big picture? What should we be thinking about with every decision that we're making in the budget? And then our last one is the current allocation of funding by department still appropriate. So you've seen this type of pie chart. The percentages don't change much year to year. So we just want to ask you, is this still appropriate? Do you like the way that it's allocated? About 50% goes to our safety services, 14% to community services. We have about 17% for culture and rec. And then other general departments, about 11%. So just take a look and make sure that that still makes sense with your level of priorities for the way we're funding.
Could we get a little bit more breakdown on that, like how much is going to utilities, public works, that sort of thing?
Yes, this is just the general fund, but I could also do that for the utility funds too. Yep. So those are our 5 questions, and as Elaine mentioned, we don't expect for you to have answers right now unless you do. But I'm happy to provide any information you need between now and the next conversation that we have, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the breakdowns in general would help a lot to be able to see those
on the pie chart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. And also the contracts. I think that's a great point to provide us with that information too. So thank you.
Okay.
Just kind of a procedural question. How do you want to do this? If somebody has feedback right now, do you want it? Do you want them to email you the feedback? Well, how do you want to do this?
All of the above. If the floor is open, if anybody has anything you want to convey to Stacy or me, please share tonight. In the 14 days until our next meeting, I welcome you to just come to me, privately and share, and we'll report that out at the next meeting as well. And then also at the 28th, as Stacy shared, will be another budget budget workshop, and we'll reserve time at the beginning to return to these questions. I will share out any feedback I heard in the interim, and at that time, anyone up here can, again, throw in additional ideas.
Okay.
You text us these questions?
Oh, yeah, we can, Councilmember, or Vice Mayor Sheldon was asking if I can send out the questions, and I will do that, yes.
Councilmember Kozlowski.
So I have one thing that is, I guess, maybe answers all 5 questions in a little bit of an interrelated way. One thing that I've thought a lot about and have commented on previously is that, to a lot of different people, and here is that the city is over time going to grow from the 80-ish thousand residents that we have now to something quite a bit more than that. It's already apparent that some of the community facilities that we have here at the City Hall complex are inadequate for a bigger city in terms of just size and location and things like that. So as a small request, which I'll, detail for you before the next meeting, I think that having a sort of future fund for an annex or some kind of enhancement to our city complex for outdoor events, for indoor events, and how it is, where we locate that. I think some funding for the planning staff to see how that would, give some suggestions as to how that we might accomplish that over time. That will lead probably to a request in future years for starting to save up some money for those types of projects or other types of funding
And it might be helpful, Pam, if you could give us the information about what additional civic facilities are planned in the Folsom Plan area, because I know there are some.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Anybody else? I'll go ahead and share one idea that I've been talking with the city manager and Stacy and Jim about. I've been following the city of Palo Alto, and everybody on the Palo Alto City Council has an MBA from Stanford, so it's a pretty good city council to model. PERS changed the discount rate, the assumed rate of return on their investments from 7.5% to 7% over 3 years, which is one of the reasons that we've had to contribute more to PERS. But even PERS' own experts will tell you that 7% is still too rosy of a prediction. So the city of Palo Alto did their own actuarial study, forgetting their unfunded pension liability and just looking at how much they're collecting now for people who are currently working for the city. And they used a more realistic number of 6.2%. And they found that they had to contribute another $8 million a year just to meet the current obligations. So what they did was set up a trust to put some money in, let it grow interest, and at some point, if they could not cash flow their payments to PERS, that they could draw from this trust, which is what we do for our retiree health care. So for me, kind of my number one priority would be to see, when you were talking about, if you had a surplus, did you want to put some into the fund balance, or, I would be interested in seeing what it would look like if we were to do a trust that we could use for PERS, similar to what we do for our retiree health care. Anybody else have a?
I'm going to just send an email, but I'm still focused dead set on traffic mitigation and traffic enforcement resources for Folsom PD, and then the battalion chief discussion we had last go around. I'd want to bring that back forward. So I'll put it out there for now, early on, so we can look at that.
Okay, great, thank you.
And the reason I'm asking about the breakdown on utilities and public works, I know it's not general fund, but that affects infrastructure, piping, storm drains, roadways, interchanges, other traffic needs, and because that's kind of been my personal area of expertise for my entire professional career. So I don't want to just look just at the general fund. I want to look at all of it. And so if there needs to be discussions about which projects are going to get funded, and not that we don't hear about this anyway in the Capitol, but I'd like to take a little bit of a longer look, because we don't know necessarily that measure is going to pass, and we need to know where we are if that doesn't happen.
Okay, yeah, certainly.
Would you put the first chart back up?
This one?
I think that chart there, if you just pay attention to it and go back and look at 07 and 5 in that area, that should tell you what you're gonna have as your priorities. I know we poo-poo that reserve fund, but if that fund hadn't been sitting at around 17,000, we would have, excuse me, 17 million, we would have had much more problems and suffered tremendously in 9 through 12, 13. So I think before we start spending, we better think about saving. And one, I mean, I'm old-fashioned. I put the money in an envelope and save it till I got enough to buy something, I buy it. Okay? And it usually pays off. I don't go too much in debt. And I think we should remember that chart because it could come again.
Yes.
And if it comes again and we start fooling around with our reserve, we don't get it up to that number, and probably has to be bigger because we cost more today than we did in 08. I think we better pay attention to what the history is telling us. It can happen again because it's easy to spend and pick up new things, new gimmicks, and new, infrastructure. You gotta keep it going, or you get worse. If you don't maintain it, you're going to have to pay more to replace it. It's just as simple.
Just to add to that, Ernie, I think, if I remember correctly, the number was actually 12 million, but that's going back to 06 and 07. Right. And if you look at the general fund reserves, well, that's actually not reserves, it's, revenues. We were at about $70 million. Where now we're at about 91 million. I think the reserves last year were 17 to 18, something like that. But when we started that, when we spent it down, it started, I believe, at 12 million and went down to like 3.
Right.
Okay, we do have one member of the public who would like to speak. And again, if anybody else would like to, if you could just fill out a blue card and give it to Officer Salvo.
Okay, our speaker will be Loretta Hedinger.
I sort of telegraphed what I'm going to say now in my previous remarks. I have been saying for a long time now that the city needs historic preservation expertise, either on staff or as a consultant that is regularly retained for that purpose. It just is so important. And so I would hope that whatever budgetary means you can use to create that sort of a position or create that sort of a fund, that it would become a priority. And I have one other little request. We have one park that has been virtually ignored for the 20-plus years that the city has owned it, and that is the ground sluice mining Chinese digging site. The city has done nothing to preserve this National Register site, and I would hope that it could finally rise in priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Loretta. Okay, next item, please.
Your next item is item number 10. This is ordinance number 1299, an ordinance repealing and replacing the tree preservation ordinance as set forth in Chapter 12.16 of the Folsom Municipal Code. This will be introduction and first reading of the ordinance, presented by Amy Nunez, the city arborist.
Great, thank you. Okay, and just a reminder, this is a lot of information, but if we could just jot down our questions and let Amy go all the way through her presentation, I think we will get through this expeditiously.
Good evening, Mayor Aquino, members of the council. My name is Amy Nunez. I am with the Community Development Department, and I am the city arborist. I am very pleased to be standing here before you tonight to present to you this proposal for the new tree preservation ordinance. As you might recall, back in April of last year, Pam Johns gave the kickoff presentation introducing this update effort. Our current ordinance is about 25 years old now. It was created with the intent of promoting the public health and general welfare of the citizens of Folsom, and also to enhance the beauty and character of the city through the preservation of trees. The intent of our current tree preservation ordinance is something that we are holding fast to in this update effort. It is because of this ordinance that in large part we are able to boast 14 years running now as a designated Tree City USA through the Arbor Day Foundation, which is something we are very proud of. However, over the last couple of decades, gaps and ambiguities have been identified by staff and stakeholders alike with challenges in implementing the ordinance. The current ordinance focuses a lot on tree removal and mitigation over preservation. There is a lack of clear guidance in parts of the ordinance, and also a lack of acknowledgement to nationally recognized industry standards in arboriculture. So as of right now, the current ordinance doesn't fulfill the goals of the 2035 general plan, which speaks to reducing urban heat island effect and also reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which trees do very well on both accounts. So this update effort is intended to refocus the ordinance on preserving trees, and then also to clarify those ambiguities, close those gaps, and incorporate best management practices. Just a quick reminder of the timeline of this process. Following Pam's introductory kickoff presentation in April, we then hosted stakeholder interviews and did some community outreach meetings to garner initial feedback from residents and stakeholders. We also conducted comparative analyses with our neighboring jurisdictions to see what they were doing with regard to tree preservation. In October, I stood before you to give the informational workshop where we asked residents to chime in on the release of the public review draft, which also coincided with that presentation and was released in October. Well, we asked and Folsom responded. We did receive quite a bit of feedback during the public review process. Attachment number 3 in the packets that you received on this item is a track changes version of the ordinance since you saw it last in October. You will see quite a few changes, most of which were technical and detail-oriented in nature. But there were a small handful of substantive changes that were made during the review process, and that's what I'm going to be going over with you tonight. Those items include the definition for heritage tree, including an additional finding for tree removal to give residents a little bit more flexibility with their landscapes, clarifying requirements for tree preservation and mitigation plans, and then also adding in details for the incentives for tree preservation. In the initial outreach that we conducted last year, we did receive quite a bit of voiced desires to acknowledge the inherent benefit of all trees beyond our native oak species and adding protections to more trees. So with that information, we expanded the definition of heritage tree. During the public review process, we received positive feedback on the expansion, but then also some concerns with possibly protecting trees we don't necessarily want to be protecting. So some clarifying language has been added to the definition to acknowledge that there will be an exempted list of trees that will not be eligible for heritage status. And these are species that are invasive according to the California Invasive Plant Council, and trees like palms, which aren't technically trees and don't provide the same level of benefit. The second substantive change that we made since the public review draft was including a finding for tree removal approval to give Folsom residents a little bit more flexibility with their street trees. If a resident wants to do some re-landscaping projects, keeping in mind water conservation goals, we definitely do not want to hinder those aims. So an additional finding was added basically saying, if you're a Folsom resident and you want to remove your street tree, you will get approval so long as you agree to replace that tree. Focal change number 3 was adding in some clarifying language to the concept of the tree protection and mitigation plan. There were concerns about not allowing other professionals to actually participate in the creation of that plan. So we did include some language to acknowledge that an engineer or landscape architect or what have you could be involved with the creation of the tree protection and mitigation plan and illustrating and drawing those plans out. We also clarified that during the entitlement process for subdivision and tentative parcel map applications, that the tree protection and mitigation plan would be a required part of that application, with the aim of inducing more thoughtful parcel and site design early on in the process with regard to trees and tree preservation. An added benefit of this would be a possibility to streamline the tree permit process when lots get sold to developers. Focal change number 4, this was probably the most substantive change area that was made during the public review process. During the informational workshop that I gave back in October, I introduced this concept of tree preservation credits on development sites. We have refined this concept to make it applicable, and I do have some scenarios to demonstrate to you in just a few slides. And also, just to remind the council, there is a current line item in the current ordinance that specifies trees that fall within the building footprint of a house to be built have a substantially reduced mitigation rate that equates to about 1 inch of diameter replacement for each tree removed, regardless of the size of that tree. We have taken that out of this update and introduced the buildable envelope concept versus the building footprint, in which we specify trees removed for development within a buildable envelope have a reduced mitigation rate of 50%. So in other words, the mitigation requirements for trees removed do go up, but this still acknowledges the fact that sometimes trees just cannot be preserved for development. So this change tries to reconcile the need to mitigate the loss of natural resources with property rights and the right to develop lots in accordance with the zoning code. So this is the first scenario that I have to show you tonight. This is an actual submittal that we received not too long ago. This house layout sits over 10 healthy native oak trees and critically impacts 2 others. The removal of these trees equates to 146 inches in removed diameter. And when I say diameter, I'm talking about diameter of the trunks of the trees. So 146 inches of removal. Under our current ordinance, this applicant has to mitigate for 33 of that 146 inches removed. Our proposed language specifies that of that 146 inches, with the reduction of 50% mitigation requirements, they would be subject to accounting for 78.5 inches of those losses. This next slide is considerations for if this applicant had simply flipped the footprint of their house to save 4 of those 12 trees. Under the current ordinance, they would be subject to 22 inches of mitigation versus the 33 they would have had to in the prior slide. Our proposed ordinance, with our concept of tree preservation credits for trees that are preserved on site, those trees would count as credit against any mitigation requirements for trees removed. So in our proposed ordinance, in this scenario, this applicant would be subject to 15.5 inches of mitigation versus the original 78.5. So even though their mitigation requirements in inches are reduced from our current ordinance in this proposal, in this scenario, we're actually saving 4 trees And trees are a time investment, and oftentimes when we're removing trees that are 24 inches, 30 inches, and so forth in diameter, it takes decades and sometimes even centuries for a tree to obtain that kind of diameter. So some substantial changes with this proposal. This is the second scenario I have to show you. You might actually recognize this. I used this scenario in my informational workshop back in October. This applicant placed the house over a stand of 6 oak trees. These 6 trees equated to 140 inches. A few of these trees were pretty substantial in size. Under our current ordinance, the applicant was subject to 6 inches of mitigation for the removal of these 140 inches of tree. Our proposal suggests that they at least account for 50% mitigation for the loss of these trees, which would equate to 70 inches. Now, something pretty interesting happens. If the applicant were to have shifted the house, say they had to critically impact one of the trees, but they were able to save 5 of the 6. Under our current ordinance, this applicant would now be subject to 50 inches worth of mitigation versus the 6 inches in the previous slide where they removed all 6 trees. In our proposal, with this concept of tree preservation credits, all the trees were healthy. They would count as credit against their mitigation requirements, and this applicant would have been subject to 1 inch of replacement. So, in other words, we're saving the trees on the site, and we're getting a replacement tree back. So that concludes the presentation for tonight. It did come to our attention before this meeting that there was a copy-paste error in the document that you received of the ordinance. There was an applicability section missing, and I'm going to let Steve Long walk us through what to do about that.
Thank you, Amy, and Madam Mayor and the members of the City Council. In your packet on page 9 of 27 of the staff report, you see right after the definition section, of 12.16.020, all of a sudden appears 12.16040. So 030, the applicability section was unintentionally omitted. On page 374 of the packet, you'll see 12.16.030, and that is the language that Amy would like you to insert back into the proposed ordinance, should you decide to introduce and make first reading of ordinance number 1299.
You're saying it doesn't exist, or what's in there is incorrect?
It should be in there.
Okay.
It should be in there.
Councilmember Gaylord, I'm going to take credit for this cut and paste error and admit that in your track changes version, you see there's a short paragraph on applicability, and I simply omitted that from the ordinance when I put the clean version into the ordinance. And so we could either read that into the record or ask the council to reference that. And if you plan to take action to introduce this ordinance, that we'd like that section to be read into the record as well.
Got it. What's the section number again?
12.16.030.
12.16.1030?
030.
Okay. Okay. Are there any questions for Amy?
I have 2, and one you don't have to answer. Okay. The first one is back to our discussion of accessory dwelling units. Is there anything in any of those accessory dwelling unit state laws that prohibit us from charging tree mitigation fees if an accessory dwelling unit is proposed to displace one?
I asked Desmond that question the other day. The answer is still pending.
Gotcha, okay. And then the one that you don't have to answer has to do with a certain project that came before the council prior to my joining it, which is, could you consider could you invalidate the things you can do to a heritage tree if you were to build a treehouse / accessory dwelling unit in it? You don't need to answer that one. Thank you very much.
Anyone have any questions down this side?
No, I think you did a really great job. Everyone did a good job on it, and I liked the comments that were provided, so it was really good. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Amy, I have a question. There is a table that shows the native oak trees, and it talks about the trunk versus the multi-trunked. And I just want to ask you about the asterisk. It says a native multi-trunk tree listed above with a single stem 6 inches or greater shall be considered a native oak tree. So the way I interpret that is if it's a multi-trunk tree, but combined all those trunks don't equal 20 inches or more, but one of the trunks is 6 inches, then it's a native oak tree. Am I interpreting that correctly?
That is correct. That was the intent of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we do have a few people who would like to speak on this item.
Okay, your first speaker this evening is Janine Annalise Ferrer, who will be followed by Jody Carlson.
God, you all look so frightening up there. Try not to pass out. First of all, let me say thank you, everybody, for taking such time and effort and care, and Amy and Pam and Elaine and the whole council. This is my third run-through of the document. Unfortunately, my public comments went by way of some water, along with the technical device. But some of you that don't know me, I have been a resident of Folsom for 22 years now. I'm an obsessive tree person and have photographed many of our trees for the past 22 years. I just want to make briefly two things. One, looking at this document, it routinely references the ANSI standards. I just want to put on record that standards are standards. Government agencies and construction folks need to have standards that they reference. I do not believe that standards are necessarily best practices. And as a botanist for the most of my life, in addition to plant PhDs, plant physiologists, soil scientists, there are standards and there are best practices. In some of the public comments, things have been made where the city might consider putting out recommendations of how-tos, how to do something, how to plant a tree, what is a best practice versus a standard. I would like to leave that open to the various extension agencies, the cooperative extension, and other experts to make some sort of a determination. In my opinion, as far as standards are concerned for this document, I think that ANSI standards are fine. Just understand that within ANSI and within ISA, there are discussions going on regarding what best practices are as these standards try to get updated. Bear with me, I think I've got my citations right. On 12.16.040, you mention 6 inches of mulch. I believe that's the section where they're talking about potentially, once you have cordoned off a tree, not to place something on top of the soil. Again, I lost the majority of my notes. I just want to
Hey,
make...
Janine, will you just make sure that you're speaking into the microphone so we can...
Okay.
Everyone's watching you at home right now, so.
Sarah, I love you so much. Thank you. Mayor Aquino, because she knows I'm afraid, terribly afraid of talking in public. but I can talk a tree to death or a human. That being said, 6 inches of mulch, I just want to make sure that that doesn't prevent citizens who take advantage of things like free arborist chip drop to be able to place more than 6 inches of mulch on top of trees. Some sort of clarification. That question was brought to me, and so I'm bringing it.
Okay.
Just-
We'll let Amy address all the public comments when they're
Right,
finished.
and then on 12, 16, 220, you talk about critical impact on a tree as far as damage. I'm proposing that you take critical impact and make that plural. I think in that section with critical impact, you're trying to mitigate the fact that if somebody hits a tree with a weed whacker once, that should not be considered a critical impact. However, when you routinely hit a tree with a weed whacker, those multiple impacts can be critical.
Actually, Janine, those two sections, the one that you cited previously, the .040 and .220, surprised they're so far away from each other in the document because they talk about the same things,
Okay. All right.
including the hitting it with a weed whacker.
Okay. And as far as the master tree list is concerned for the city, is there any sort of public comment available to what trees will be put on the master tree list and what trees will or will not be allowed to be street trees?
You've got an opinion, I can tell.
No, I run Folsom Plant Chat, and a lot of people have opinions, and I'm only the bravest one to come up here and talk.
Let's hear it.
No, I don't have specifics. I'm just curious.
If we could just have, any dialogue needs to be on the microphone. So,
Right.
so Janine, why
Right.
don't you just make your comments and then staff can circle back?
Right, okay, so staff can circle
you.
back on that. And the only other thing that was, I just want to say thank you for including shade trees on commercial property as regulated trees. I'm just throwing this out there as a comment. As somebody who's lived here for 22 years, I've watched a lot of these which are going to be called regulated shade trees, decline in health. I personally don't believe that every single tree is worth saving, that a lot of these trees, we need to work with our commercial property owners and even civilian volunteers to get some of these trees replaced in a way that it does not put an undue financial burden on the commercial property owner. Just throwing that out there as an idea on how to get some of these dead and diseased trees replaced, to incentivize, or somehow to incentivize the existing commercial property. And that's it.
Thank you very much.
Next speaker is Jody Carlson.
Hi, I'm Jody Carlson. I'm a city resident. I live at 124 Ponderosa Court. I'm also a certified arborist, and I am a city arborist for the city of Sacramento, so I'm very familiar with tree ordinances. I only have two objections with this ordinance. One is 12.16.160A1B, where they show reduced mitigation rates within the building footprint. The goal of this new ordinance, one of the goals is to encourage preservation. And I believe that discounting mitigation rates does not encourage preservation, whether it's in the building footprint or the building envelope. The other objection I have is A1D, where you're incentivizing the retention of existing trees. I think it's good to incentivize the retention of unprotected trees, trees that aren't already protected by the ordinance. But to incentivize retention of a tree that's already protected doesn't seem to make sense to me. You've got a penalty for removing it already, and then you're offering also an incentive to retain it at the same time. It should be one or the other. And the incentives should be preserved for trees that aren't already protected. And that's it.
Thank you.
You have no more requests to speak.
Okay, Amy, do you want to address any of those comments?
Sure. So with regard to the comments about the 6 inches of mulch, that was a best recommendation for long-term. Obviously, if someone is utilizing the services of chip drop or another service, temporary accumulation is not something that we're going to go knock on someone's door and handcuff them and drag them to jail. The purpose of that prohibited activity was to thwart the accumulation of debris and construction materials within the tree protection zones of trees that are supposed to be cordoned off and preserved.
That and mulch will compress, but soil will not. So if somebody puts 6 inches of soil or rock at the base of an oak tree, they should be handcuffed and taken to jail.
Yes, yes. With the critical impact comment, the section that she first referenced was more with regard to soil compaction and construction impacts to trees, with critical being the key term there. If somebody nicks the trunk of a tree, oftentimes that's not considered critical. If someone is doing donuts in their bobcat after it's rained heavily, that would be considered critical. And with the weed whacker, as you already mentioned, we do have that in the prohibited activities section. With regard to the master tree list, that is actually being developed to roll out with the hopeful implementation of this ordinance update. We are very welcome to comments on that topic. So if that commenter feels the need to send me an email with those suggestions, I am very happy to take that in, and we will definitely consider those suggestions. With regard to incentives for getting businesses to remove trees that probably need to be removed, we did add language in the ordinance, and a lot of it was actually carried over from the current ordinance. If a tree is diseased or dying, obviously we're not going to get in the way of having someone remove that tree. And also, on the topic of parking lot shading trees and things like that, at the next meeting, Pam will be presenting to you a proposal to partner with the Sacramento Tree Foundation. And we have a lot of really exciting programs that we're hoping to take advantage if we're able to partner with them. And one of those projects is going to be actually doing outreach to businesses and property managers to educate them on the tree ordinance, on the zoning code and shading requirements, and hopefully getting them to, one, take better care of their trees, not top their trees, and if there are gaps in their parking lots that need to be shaded, get those gaps filled. And then as far as Ms. Carlson's comments go with regard to rewarding the removal of trees or the 50% mitigation reduction, that was something that we have been having conversations about throughout this entire process. The struggle throughout this process has been trying to strike a balance between protecting trees and our natural resources, but also acknowledging the fact that development needs to happen. And so the approach that we took with this tree preservation credit concept was carrots and sticks. The carrots are for preserving trees, the sticks are for removing trees, and what we've proposed is our attempt at a compromise at those two things. I believe that was the meat of the comments.
Okay, thank you. So can I just clarify something, Mr. Wong, just for my own education? So if we adopt a motion to introduce the ordinance and have a first reading, there can still be changes made before the final product is adopted?
Negative. It generally goes like this. If the changes are very minor, like typographical, editorial changes, that's fine. But substantive changes will need to be brought back to the council for a new first reading.
Okay.
And then it can go to the next final adoption.
Okay. So I do have some very minor edits, but more typographical stuff, so I'll get those to you guys. But
Okay.
questions, or we'll entertain a motion of some sort?
I'll move the first reading because I don't know that, it sounds from what staff is saying that the changes or these other lists, like the list of street trees, is going to come back as a separate document. So, and I'm confident that if there's a typo or anything of that nature that you would have found it. So I'm happy to have you pass that along, and any editorial, grammatical, or punctual changes that Mayor Aquino has to give to you, I'm sure, perfectly correct. Did you get like a 1200 on your English SATs?
So your motion includes insertion of section 12.16.030.
Yes.
And I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion from Councilmember Howell and a second from Councilmember Gaylord. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Gaylord?
Yes.
Howell?
Yes.
Kozlowski?
Yes.
Sheldon?
Yes.
And Aquino.
Yes. Okay, moving on.
Your last item tonight is your public hearing, item number 11. This is resolution number 10377, a resolution amending resolution number 4792 to increase the city's tree mitigation fees. And again, presenting will be Principal Planner Desmond Parrington.
Mayor Aquino, members of the City Council, I'm here tonight to talk about a proposed fee increase to our tree in lieu mitigation fee. So the fee was originally established along with the ordinance back in 1995. It hasn't been updated since that time. It is collected as mitigation when a protected tree is removed, and then it's placed in the city's tree replacement and replanting fund. The fee is
Otherwise
not,
known as the Tree Mitigation Fund?
yeah.
Okay.
The fee is not kept pace with the actual costs of tree replacement and replanting. In addition to that, the current fee uses a kind of an odd methodology that's really no longer used much anymore, where it provides a range of tree sizes right here, and then a set fee for that range. And then on average, that kind of equates to about $114 an inch. So the standard approach that's used by most communities in California is a per inch fee, or they use an appraised value. The appraised value is a little more complex, and so it provides a little bit more of or creates a little bit more of a burden for the homeowner or property owner. So we've elected to recommend the per inch approach, which is what many jurisdictions used. So it's based on the diameter inch of the removed tree. We did a survey of current fees in the region, and they range from about $100 an inch to up to $459 an inch. That's for heritage oak trees in El Dorado County. On average, the fee is about $221 an inch. I do want to point out that a lot of jurisdictions have not updated their fees in quite some time, like us. So those fees tend to be lower. Ideally, your fees should cover some or all of your tree replacement costs, and they should be designed not to encourage removal, but to discourage or encourage preservation whenever possible. So because this is an impact fee associated with the removal of trees, we have to do an analysis of that impact. It's called a nexus study. It has to show the relationship between the fee and the impact, and why that fee is appropriate to be charged on new development. This is part of AB 1600, also known as the State Mitigation Fee Act. So it asks 5 basic questions. What's the purpose of the fee? How are you using the fee? Is there a reasonable relationship between the fee and the development? Is there a reasonable relationship between the need for that public facility? In this case, the public facility includes community amenities, and trees are identified in our current code and in our general plan as an amenity. so the relationship between the need for the trees and the type of development that would pay that fee. And again, a reasonable relationship between the fee amount, the cost of preserving or replacing trees, and the development that, again, would pay that fee. So we prepared the Nexus study, which is attachment 3 in your staff report. The fee would be charged on development that results in the removal of a protected tree. So again, there's a variety of reasons why that impact has a negative effect on the city. Reduces our urban tree canopy, less shade, less air pollution reduction, less oxygen, more of an urban heat island effect, and it reduces, as Amy talked about, our ability to meet our general plan goals. So what we looked at was the actual retail cost of purchasing a 15-gallon tree, which is equivalent to a 1-inch diameter tree, and then looking at the actual cost of planting that tree, providing irrigation, and then maintenance and monitoring over a 3-year period to allow that tree to be established so that it's successful in terms of regrowing. The fee is proportionate, has that relationship to develop it, because if you remove a larger tree with more diameter inches, then your mitigation would be more as well. So it takes into account the fact that either you have to plant as replacement many trees, or you would pay the fee to have the city eventually plant many trees as well. So in our analysis, really the maximum fee level allowed by the Nexus study is $389 per inch. So acquisition and planting is roughly $101, maintenance and monitoring is $269, and then administration is roughly $19. Again, we were conservative on these numbers, and we validated these with retail nurseries and talking with organizations such as the Tree Foundation and landscape architects and arborists and so forth. So the Nexus establishes basically the maximum fee that you can charge. You can charge a lower fee. So staff's recommendation, keeping in mind what the regional average is, and the balance between ensuring that we have sufficient funds to cover the bulk of the cost of replanting trees, but also that we're not providing a significant burden on homeowners and developers. We're recommending $250 an inch. And we're also recommending that we use the standard, as I talked about earlier, of per diameter inch, so it would be $250 per diameter inch rather than the range that we currently use. And then the other thing is that we are recommending that along with the tree preservation ordinance, that this also go into effect on April 1st so that we have additional time to get the word out to folks, let them know about the coming fee increase if you were to improve it, and that we can do kind of additional education both about our tree preservation ordinance and about the fee increase. So that concludes my presentation, and I'd open it up for any questions that you have.
Anyone have any questions for Desmond?
Got a comment.
Okay.
As we mentioned yesterday, this fee is increased significantly from what we've been used to. And the only thing I say, I think you did the Nexus. I don't think there's no problem there, especially when you reduced it. But as I said yesterday, I'll say it again, don't accumulate money in a bank. Use that money to do what the purpose of the Nexus is. Take care of the trees. And then we should have no complaints. Everything should be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, my only comment would be I was shocked to see that a live oak at Green Acres is in Folsom is one of the best, cheapest prices to get a live oak in the region. That amazed me. So at $85, I don't know how we can assume it's $101 to get it planted. So if I were to say anything, it's probably the fee's probably still not where it should be, but I'm happy that it's at least increasing, especially given that we haven't raised it in 25 years. That was a lot of oak inches ago.
Anybody else? Okay, so this is a public hearing, so we're going to open the public hearing, and we do have some members of the public who would like to speak.
You have 2 requests to speak under this public hearing, one from Barbara Larry, and Barbara will be followed by Jody Carlson.
Good evening, council members. This won't be the first time I've appeared at the council to talk in favor of tree retention and tree replacement. I think some of you might remember I coined a phrase a while ago called Prairie No Oaks in a letter to the editor when they started taking oak trees out of the Prairie Oaks development years ago. So I'm back. I'm happy to see that this is being reevaluated at this time. I think, and I probably need some clarification from staff, but I believe that protected trees aren't just oaks, that protected trees also apply to our street trees. So, and this has been an ongoing problem for a number of years with people removing street trees throughout neighborhoods in Folsom, and especially during the drought, and replacing them with yards that look like Arizona and have absolutely no shade. This past summer, I worked for the Sacramento Tree Foundation as a volunteer and drove around town with a little heat monitor. And the results were clear and what one would expect, and that was where there were more trees, the heat islands were reduced. And where there were no trees, which happens a lot in the high-density developed neighborhoods where there's no room to put a tree in a yard that gets large enough to provide much shade, the heat islands were much larger. So I'm happy to see that we're moving forward with this. I understand the stick and the carrot way of getting people to retain trees, but we really need to improve the education, and I'd like to participate in any efforts the city's undertaking to do that, to get people to replace the trees that they have removed that haven't been replaced, and to disincentivize the removal of them in the first place. So thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Hope you'll all vote to support this.
Thank you.
Okay, your next speaker is Jody Carlson.
I think Desmond did a great job of summarizing the logic in coming up with the $250 per inch, but I still think it's way too low. In Sacramento, it's $325 per inch, and that was set 4 years ago. So it should be a little higher. I think that the conservative estimate that he gave of $389, since it's conservative, it should be the minimum. And $250 is a discount developers just don't need, in my opinion. I think they need to pay the maximum amount that it costs to replace an inch of a tree. There's no need to discount developers who are making a lot of money on these homes and our trees, and they're making this money at the expense of our climate. That's it.
Thank you. Any other requests to speak?
We have no further requests to speak on this item.
Then we will close the public hearing. I am going to apologize in advance because I told you, Amy and Pam, that I would get you this information early and life got in the way. I just want to make 2 minor edits because we're proposing to adopt this resolution tonight. But the fourth whereas on the first page says, whereas the city's tree in lieu tree fee. I think one of those tree words is probably, does not need to be there. You tell me if you want to take away the first one or the second one.
Let's take away the second one.
Okay. And again, just a very minor thing, but under the general findings, section B, the one line up from the bottom, improvements, I think should just be improvement, no S. And if it was just a staff report, I wouldn't care, but because this is the resolution, I will make those suggested edits. Any other comments or questions from my colleagues?
I'll move the item.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Gaylord?
Yes.
Howell?
Yes.
Kozlowski?
Yes.
Sheldon? And Aquino.
Yes. Amy and Desmond and the rest of your team, thank you very much. We know you put a lot of time in this, and we appreciate your efforts. And I just want to say that for me personally, I do appreciate that you're trying to balance the preservation of trees, which we all want, with private property rights, which is also very important to many of us. So thank you very much.
I would only add that I would request that we would review it more frequently than every 25 years.
We won't be around.
Done.
Okay.
Your next item is city manager reports.
Hello, everyone. The Sacramento Regional Transit District has expanded its popular on-demand micro-transit service to 6 new communities, including Folsom. You've probably seen their nicely branded shuttle buses out already. Similar to other ride-hailing services, Smart Ride relies on a smartphone app to schedule customized trips. The app, called SAC-RT Smart Ride, is powered by VIA, the world's leading provider and developer of on-demand mobility services, and you can find out more at www.sacrt.com.
That was a really good ad for VIA, by the way, Elaine.
Yeah, I know. I was just, wow, that was. The application period for the local nonprofit organizations or corporations to sell state-approved fireworks in the city of Folsom begins February 3rd through March 20th. Folsom's nonprofit organizations are eligible to sell Safe and Sane fireworks to the public during the 4th of July holiday season as a way to raise money for their Folsom-based organization. And for more information, you can visit our fire department's webpage. Lego enthusiasts are encouraged to submit best original creations for competition in the Folsom Public Library's Lego Building Contest. Entries are due to the Folsom Public Library beginning Tuesday, January 21st through Saturday, January 25th. And please visit folsom.ca.us/library for more information. And finally, do you have a passion for animals and want to make a difference? Consider joining the Folsom Zoo Sanctuary's volunteer docent team. Docents host school tours, staff booths at community events, help with youth camps, assist at special events, and other ongoing duties. And the docent training class begins February 10th, and you need to register for that by February 3rd. And actually, I should also add that the city of Folsom will observe Martin Luther King Jr. Day on Monday, January 20th. So please consult our website as to, most services are closed, but just double check before you head out. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kozlowski.
Yes. With the holidays and everything, there isn't a lot to report, but just looking forward, I have some interesting things that are coming up that I wanted to share. This Thursday is our first SACOG meeting of the year, which I'll be at, and I expect that we'll end up talking about the things we always talk about, transportation issues and housing. The 19th, I have an Eagle Scout Court of Honor. We're minting yet another Eagle Scout here in Folsom, so congratulations in advance to Zachary Estrella. The Sacramento Valley Division of the California League of Cities, of which we are a member, and I have been representing us at meetings of, the president of our division asked me to serve on one of the statewide policy committees. So on the 23rd, I'll be at the Governance, Transparency, and Labor Relations Policy Committee meeting instead of the State of the City address. So
that sounds like fun.
It's gonna be great. And then finally, on the 30th and 31st, I will be going with a delegation of members of the SACOG Board of Directors to San Diego to visit with our counterparts from SANDAG to look at some transportation projects that they're doing and housing projects that are related to that. So busy last couple of weeks of the month. And then last but not least, track season is almost here. So anybody that may be listening, we have excellent track and field teams at Sutter Middle School, Folsom Middle School, Folsom High School, and especially Vista Del Lago High School. And the school district also holds a track meet on one day every year for elementary school kids that are in at least 4th and 5th grade. So take advantage of that. It's the perfect sport to pair with any other that you may do. Thank you.
Councilmember Howell.
Just wanted to thank all the folks that worked on with the FHDA and the Historic District on the tree lighting this year. It was a wonderful, wonderful event. Thanks to all the volunteers at with the Friends of the Zoo employees, and all of the 501s, all of the nonprofits in town that made the holiday lights at the zoo such a wonderful, wonderful event. Sorry that it rained so many of those nights, but fortunately, we did not get rained on the night that I went with my friends. Congratulations, Sarah. I'm sure you'll do a great job this year as our mayor, and Ernie will be your main backup man, or wingman, I guess that makes him. For anybody that's interested in the Rotary Ann's Crab Feed, which I think is probably the oldest one in Folsom, I think we've been doing it for like 40 years. If anybody's interested in getting tickets for that, there are still tickets available. It is Saturday, February 1st at the community center, and if you're interested in getting tickets, please call or email me, and I will see that we can get them for you. On the regional committees and commissions, Elaine already mentioned the rollout of the microtransit in Folsom. That's kind of first mile, last mile. Download the app, and it can get you to another transportation facility like light rail or a bus stop, or hopefully wherever you need to go. And if anybody didn't see it, they RT also rolled out a new service last Sunday that goes from Midtown and downtown out to the airport. And I think it's only $2.50. I'm not sure exactly where one would park. I think the assumption would be that you would get dropped off at light rail or take microtransit to light rail, get on light rail, and then take it downtown, and then you can get to the airport for $2.50. STA, the discussion and public comment continues predominantly about the project listing or the potential expenditure plan for, which is a list of projects related to the potential for Measure A, which would be a sales tax initiative that would go on the ballot in November. And things are going along swimmingly at Regional Sanitation District. And as I said at the last meeting, we're not looking at any rate increases, just moving forward with the completion of the plant expansion. The Sacramento Placerville Transportation Rail JPA hasn't met. We only meet quarterly, so I have nothing on that front. And with that, Happy New Year to everybody. And
Thank you. Councilmember Gaylord?
I don't have anything, but I'd be remiss if I didn't point out at how good of a job you've done on your first council
Thank you.
meeting as mayor, so thank you for that leadership.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Vice Mayor Sheldon?
Well, people probably wonder where the Veterans Parade results are. I mean, normally we get them in December. Well, a combination of a little delay, and then our vendor had an operation which has slowed us down. But we're hoping we'll have it toward the end of the month, and we'll coordinate with the mayor and with the city manager. But the results are done, and we know who's who, but we just got to get them here and make the presentation.
Thank you. Okay, and I just want to give a reminder that the mayor's office is open every Thursday, second floor here at City Hall from 2 to 5 p.m. No appointment is necessary. Just drop in and you can ask a question, share a concern, pitch an idea, just introduce yourself. And if you're a Girl Scout, come sell me some Girl Scout cookies one of these Thursdays. So it's 9:27 and we're adjourned.